Tonight, Red Hood continues its decline into being nothing but Scott Lobdell showing off his original creation's Do Not Steal. Robin does exactly what anybody else would do if they woke up with the powers of Superman, shows off, and Teen Titans drops a literal nuke on a city. I have no idea how they could possibly deal with that one. All that and more tonight on the Not-So-New 52. Hello everyone and welcome to episode 177 of the Not So New 52. I am your host and don't really want to waste a lot of time in the beginning of this episode because I'm doing something a little weird. So about a month ago, you may remember that DC, in their infinite wisdom, decided to take 2 weeks of comics and condense them to 1 week. And it was because of Christmas, holidays, like it made sense. But there was a fallout to that. And the fallout to that is that next week, the comics that are coming out next week, there are 19 of them. And I would on average say, okay, I could probably do that. But because that next week happens to involve not only a multiversity issue, but also a Secret Origins issue, which are both oversized in their own right, I can't do that. So, what I am instead deciding to do is that I'm going to go through this week's episode as normal. Then, right as I wrap up the weeklies, which I always have at the end, I'm going to do 3 comics from next week. Okay? I'm just pulling them ahead. Am I breaking my rules to this show? Absolutely. Do I not have a backbone or spine at all and hold to my principles? Correct. I am very flimsy. I am made of glass and paper. So, all that being said, let me tell you the comics that are coming out this week that we're talking about. We have Batman and Robin, Batwoman, Red Hood and the Outlaws, Batman/Superman, Supergirl, Green Lantern New Guardians, Justice League, Wonder Woman, Teen Titans, Trinity of Sin, and then our 3 weeklies, Batman Eternal, Future's End, and World's End. That's all going to happen. And then immediately following that, I'm not even going to do a cutaway. I'm just going to go straight into it. I'm also going to be talking about Harley Quinn, Deathstroke, and Secret Origins. That's from next week's book. So if anyone's doing a follow-along and reading based off of what I say, why? But also just know that that's technically next week's. You can hold that off. It's just extra credit for now. So yeah, that is pretty much everything I need to say up here at the beginning. Yeah, I was gonna say something about the fact that I'm currently snowed into my house because of the big old winter storm we had up in the northeast of the U.S. But frankly, I've barely noticed because I haven't had to go anywhere. Hooray for nerd life! Anyway, like I said, let's get into the episode, and we're gonna start off with the Bat books. Batman and Robin number 38, written by Peter Tomasi, art by Patrick Gleason. So last issue was technically the Robin Rises Alpha issue, where we discovered that Robin, back from the dead, now has superpowers. It seems to be your generic flight, strength, and vulnerability stuff like that, but we don't get too deep into it. But we do open up this issue with Bruce asleep in bed and Damian in full Robin outfits just over his headboard like, come on, time to wake up, let's go. And he like pulls open his eyes and just like, let's go, patrol time. And Bruce is like, ugh, all right, fine, whatever, cave. So they go down to the Batcave. Alfred's like, all right, well, remember, Master Damian, you now have to worry about excess property damage. And he's like, yeah, all right, whatever. So he talks to Bruce on the drive down and he's like, I'm superpowered now. Maybe I should go out on my own for one night. And he's like, not happening. We're a dynamic duo, remember? So they go down to Financial District. It's your basic masked robbers, and Batman and Robin are just fighting them off. One of the guys pulls out a machine gun, starts shooting at Batman, and Robin just jumps in the way like, don't worry, I got this. And he just tanks all the hits, just straight up. They're bouncing right off his body. And he walks right up to the guy as he keeps firing the machine gun, grabs it and like crushes it in the guy's hands, and then throws him over his head into a car. And Batman's like, all right, Robin, get in the car. And he's like, no, I want to fly. And he starts to like fly up away. And he's like, no, get in the damn car. So we get back in the car, and Robin's like pissed off. He's like, hey, I didn't ask for these powers, but you're like punishing me for having them. And he's like, dude, after what you just pulled, you're not going on patrol for a week. This is not about punishing you for having powers. You are taking unnecessary risks here. You keep on, there's necessary and unnecessary. You keep on choosing the bad kind. And Robin's just like, all right, look, I could help Gotham. I could do all this stuff. And he's like, look, last I checked, I'm the one who was wearing the outfit meant to scare the criminals. That's not your job. So later on, Damien's asleep. He's having a dream where Talia, in some nightmare form, is like chastising him for being the one who's alive. And also the fact that, like, I killed you. How dare you come back to life? And we see Ra's is like, oh yeah, dying is hard. He's an Al Ghul. That's what we all do. We see the heretic is like vomiting something on him, saying like, oh, your brothers are crying. Can you hear them, Damien? And we see him freak out as he wakes up. And he freaks out so hard, he goes up through the roof of his bedroom into Alfred's bedroom, who's just sitting there having a cup of tea as Damien's like halfway through the floorboards. He's like, Nightmare Master Damien? He's like, yeah, I'm going out. So he goes out to the graves that he and his mother were previously buried in. Alfred's keeping watch and relaying everything over to Batman. Damien carves Talia's name into the gravestone, and he's like, you're dead, not me. I'm the one who came back. We beat you. I'm still here. There's a bunch of fireflies around. And he has such like an emotional point. He flies up high into the air, up into the atmosphere. Alfred's like, I lost visual. I don't know where he is. And Batman's like, don't worry. I put in a GPS tracker into his morning juice. I could track him for 48 hours. And Alfred's like, maybe just let him have this. I think it's going to be emotionally good for him to be able to burn this off himself. So he goes up into the air. He looks at the firefly one last time. And then he starts zooming off halfway across Earth. He's flying for like a full hour. And eventually he hits the southern Atlantic. And Alfred's like, where's he going to? What's going on? And Batman's like, oh, he's going back to where all this started, where he was born. And we see it is one of Ra's al Ghul's weird labs where he's building all the Damien clones and whatnot. And Damien just punches his way through a steel wall and starts breaking everything in there, just completely destroying it. And once he's finally gone, he jumps back out the hole he came through and starts diving down deep into the ocean. And I mean, like, deep, deep. It's 2.5 miles down. And Alfred's like, what the hell? This is beyond anything that we thought he was capable of. And we see that he ends up diving down to Atlantis. And he meets up with Aquaman. And he's like, hey, Aquaman, I want to talk to you. And Aquaman's like, hey, man, last I saw you, you were dead. So you're looking great, all things considered. What's up? And he's like, during the crossover issue where you met up with my dad during the arc where he was trying to revive me, you got a bunch of my clones and you're keeping them. I want them back. They belong in my custody. And he's like, why is that? And he's like, because they're me. That's good enough. So Aquaman takes them down to the garden where they're kept in like air bubbles. And it's like, yeah, they've been treated with respect. They're fine. And Damien's like, cool, can I get some help bringing them up to the surface? So Aquaman lends him some dolphins to push the air bubbles up. He rips all of them open and takes them to the island that they were just on. And he's like, look, you don't want to hurt me. I'm not here to hurt you. We're the same. We are each other. And he's like leveling with these just horrifically grotesque versions of himself. And he's like, this place belongs to you now. I've done so many terrible things in my life. I'm paying for it in so many ways. But now you're free. And as they wander off into the jungle, Robin puts back on his mask, flies away, and that's the issue. It's a very quick issue. It's a very, fast-paced one with the fight scene and the diving and all that. But it packs an emotional punch. I think that's something that I was missing from this book. I mean, obviously, Robin died at issue 17? Something like that. It's been forever that we have not had Robin in the Batman and Robin book. But, I really like these moments of introspection where Damien takes the time to say, look, I'm atoning for my past. I'm not an Al Ghul. I am Robin, and, finding what that means to me. And having these superpowers allows him to do a little bit extra with that. So, all in all, I enjoyed it. I think it's a solid issue. I would probably give it an 8. I think it just crosses that threshold. Not quite at the 8.5 for me, but still very, very good. And we'll see how this series, I guess, wraps up over the next 2 issues. Batwoman number 38, written by Marc Andreyko, art by Juan Jose Rip. So last issue, Batwoman and Etrigan went to go find Morgan Le Fay, who was being reborn in a cult sacrifice of Clayface, and also Ragman's there. So we see whatever's going on with Clayface, the body of Morgan Le Fay comes out of it, and her cult's like, oh, Morgan, our lives are yours, how about you? And they give her some robes, and she starts transforming into, like, golden horned form. And at that point, Batwoman and Etrigan bust in through one window, whereas Ragman busts through the opposite side, and Batwoman's like, who the hell is that guy? What the heck? Also, Clayface is here. What the heck? So Etrigan blasts her with Hellfire. She uses Clayface to, like, block the blast. Batwoman gets over to Ragman, like, who the hell are you? He's like, I'm Ragman. I'm here for justice. My suit. And she's like, I don't care. We can get the origin story later. Just help me fight and do the justice thing. So they start going through, attacking all of the cult members. Etrigan goes straight for Morgan Le Fay, and she's just, like, blasting him, like, no problem whatsoever. Clayface comes to, and he's like, who am I? Where am I? What's going on? He has no memory at all. And as Batwoman stares down Morgan, we see that Etrigan's like, hey, I've got an idea. And he pierces the gas main and sets it on fire with his fire breath, to which Batwoman, Ragman, and Clayface get the hell out of Dodge. They get out of the building just before it explodes. And we then cut over to Alice, a.k.a. Batwoman's sister, who's listening to a police scanner as it says, hey, explosion on this street, all units requested. And she's like, that sounds like fun. So she hops on a motorcycle, drives off towards it. We see Batwoman, everyone comes to, everyone's fine, you know, except for the cult members, clearly. And Etrigan comes out of the flame just being like, hey, sorry, but not sorry. Like, I'm going to do what I gotta need to do there. And he's saying all this in rhymes, obviously, and Batwoman, like, calls him out on it, just being like, can we not have these limericks anymore? They're really stupid. So Batwoman's like, did that kill her, though? Is she dead? And he's like, no. She's powerful. She's going to come back. No big deal. So Batwoman's like, okay, clearly Clayface plays a part in this. We can't send him to Arkham because then there's a whole bunch of crazies that Morgan Le Fay is going to be having access to. So Ragman's like, I'll take care of him. Finding truth is kind of my thing, and since he's an amnesiac, I might be able to help him. Peace. And he just teleports out with Clayface. Batwoman turns to Etrigan like, are you going to keep helping us? And he's like, yeah, I'll be around. Whatever. Bye. So we see that as police, fire, all that arrive, Batwoman meets up with Maggie, and Maggie's just there. She's lighting up a cigarette, and she's like, oh, hey, I thought you quit smoking. And she's like, yeah, you thought a lot of things, Kate. And he's like, okay, could we not, like, say that stuff? So at this point, Maggie chews her out, like, look, what really pisses me off is the fact that you're with Nocturna. And she's like, her name's Natalia. Whatever. You're with her. It's a rebound thing. She's a psycho. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? And we see Batwoman gets more and more pissed off the more accusations are thrown at her like this. And she's trying to remain calm, but eventually she pinches Kate or Maggie's cigarette out of her fingers. She's been like, you're going to judge me? It's been months since we broke up. Stop being so pathetic and get over it. And we see she transforms back into that vampire form again. And Maggie's like, I don't even know who you are. And Kate says, I don't think you ever did. So she goes off. We then go to Regency Apartments, where there's a Miss Witherspoon. I think this is the person who was against Nocturna a few issues ago. She's dead. She's a bellhop found her. She's just bloodied, and it's a gruesome fight scene or whatever. We see Batwoman gets back into her apartment. Nocturna's sitting there and just being like, do I smell another woman on you? You went to her, didn't you? And she's like, what? No. I mean, yes, I ran into her, but, like, it's not that whole thing. And she's like, whatever, I'm leaving. And she's like, hold on, can we talk about this? And Nocturna pins Kate against the wall, starts macking on her neck, just being like, just show me that you love me. So then we go over to Ragman, who, I don't remember his actual name, but he's putting away the suit, and he's like, well, I really dived in on the deep end tonight. Hopefully my grandpa would be proud of me after he passed down this suit to me. He's got Clayface in the shower, who's having a nightmare, and he's like, well, I don't really know how to explain that to anyone who comes by, but regardless, let me make myself a meal. We then see that Morgan is in an alleyway. Her body that she used to resurrect, whatever. It's failing her, and she needs to have some flesh from her own bloodline in order to make it last. So she pulls out some magic and searches for the next in the bloodline. We cut back to Ragman, who's trying to find something in his fridge. It's definitely a bachelor's fridge. And then Clayface all of a sudden wakes up and says, "Oh, she will kill again." We go to some random-ass apartment where a girl is babysitting, and she tucks in the kid, walks out of the room, and then Morgan the face, and they're like, "Oh, you'll do nicely." So she's clearly attacked. We see Kate sometime later is getting out of bed, goes to get herself a drink, and she's like, "Man, maybe this was a rebound thing. Maybe Natalia's not really that good for me." And then all of a sudden Alice is there saying like, "Oh, hey, is that Merlot?" And Beth's like, "Oh my god, Alice, or Elizabeth, you're alive." And she's like, "Oh yes, of course, but by the way, I go by Red Alice now. That's my hero name." So Red Alice. Sure. Why not? Yeah. I've said before that I think the Alice thing required you to know stuff from Batwoman that was not presented in the New 52, which is a little bit for me, but it's easy enough to get with. And this is just adding another layer on top of that. Ragman's cool. I like his shtick, just a normal-ass dude. He's got like a Jewish thing going with him, not in any like rude way or anything like that, but like that's just his thing. I hope we get more explanation on that, of like who he is as a hero, because Kate just cut him off and I really was curious about like what's his origin. I don't know anything about Ragman. Beyond that, yeah, no, it's an okay issue. I think it jumps around a little bit much, like that bit where we get Ragman's apartment, then a single page of Morgan, then a single page of him at the fridge, and then another single page of Morgan. I think that could have worked a little bit better there. But I'm going to give this one I'll give it a 7. It's good. It's all right, just not great. Red Hood and the Outlaws, number 38, written by Scott Lobdell, art by R.B. Silva. So, we've been building across a couple issues here, but Red Hood is going to see Crux, who is like from the second arc of this book and knows a whole lot of stuff about Starfire, because Starfire is off getting high on space drugs. Yeah, so we open up with some new doctor who is clearly a Professor X pastiche. He comes into Crux's Arkham cell, and he's like, "Yeah, I'm here to help you, Crux, and you gotta believe me." And all these armored guards are like leading him in, and Crux is held down with a bunch of chains. Immediately, we know that this is Jason, because the narration is all from Jason's text boxes, and he's like, "Yeah, no, it's absolutely crazy." So as all the guards let him in, he's like, "All right, thank you for letting me in. You can go now. I'll summon you when I'm done with Dr. Amal." And that's Crux's real name, and all the guards leave the room, and Crux is just like, "I've eaten the past 9 people who've come to try to cure me. What makes you different?" He's like, "I'm not here to cure you. I'm here to kill you unless you do what I tell you to." And Crux somehow, and he calls Crux Crux, but no one else does. And he's like, "Wait a minute, Crux, nobody knows that name except for..." And then he sniffs the air and he smells that it's Jason. And he's like, "Oh, you son of a bitch." So he grabs Jason out of the wheelchair in full disguise and he pushes him out, like literally through the cement wall. And he's like, "You came back here to mock my imprisonment, to torment me?" And Jason lets down the hologram, whatever it is, and he's like, "No, I'm here because you got information in your head that I need, and you're going to tell me what I want, or I'm going to pull it out of your skull." And so they start firing at each other. The guards are freaking out. They're like, "Secure the building now. We got a fight going on. It's crazy." So Crux starts attacking Jason. Jason stabs him through the tongue, which gives him cause to throw Jason across the courtyard onto a pit of spikes in the middle of Arkham. I guess it technically could be like a spiky fence or something, but it doesn't look like it. And Crux grabs him at the last second, being like, "Oh, after everything you put me through, you think I'm letting you off that easy?" And he slams Red Hood against the wall, and then Crux just flies off. And we see that the Red Hood was left behind in the garbage, like the actual helmet. It's all in the debris. So we cut over to Poland, And this is where Starfire was getting high inside of a truck. And everything's on fire. And this strange woman comes up to the firefighters and detectives and whatnot and is like, "Hi, you don't know who I am, but I am a woman with 2 very big swords. And as of 5 minutes ago, this case is closed. It's an electrical fire, and you found nothing else. Got it?" And detectives are freaked out because she's got the swords out, and they're just like, "Yeah, electrical fire, crazy. There's nothing here. What case? Let's move on." So some time passes, and Jason wakes up inside of the ship that they stole from Crux that they've been using to fly around. He's bound up, and sitting across from him, wearing Red Hood outfit, is Crux in his human form. And he's like, "Hey, sorry, needed something to wear. Don't worry, I didn't put on your helmet," because somehow he has the helmet again. And he's like, "Yeah, look, you may think you can kill me, but I'm positive that I can transform and kill you. So don't worry about it. Like, let's let this be in peace for now." And so he lets Red Hood out of his, whatever you call it, shackles, and then hugs him and says, "Look, I just wanted to say thank you." And Jason's like, what?" And he's like, "Yeah, you guys threw me into Arkham Asylum, and like I was pissed off for a while there, but I was going down a bad path, and I recognize that now. I was going to go crazy. So when I was in Arkham, I would sneak out of my cell in the middle of the night, and I would give the patients psychotherapy. Like, I would help them out. And then I'd sneak back into my normal cell and pretend to be all crazy and super, like, dragon-looking so that they'd let me stay in Arkham." And Jason's like, "That doesn't make any goddamn sense." And he's like, "Well, it's what I did." So at this point, Arsenal shows up. He left the hospital last issue. He just shows up here. He tries to get the drop on Crux. Crux just turns around, grabs the arrow, and says, like, "Yeah, look, see, I'm not a threat. I'm not here to see you, and I could kill you if I wanted to. Got it?" So he explains a little bit about how his powers work. Basically, when he is in the Crux form, he can't control it. He's not quite Hulk. He does have a little bit of control, but like it's more manic. So regardless, he jumps into the driver's seat of this spaceship because obviously it was his. And he's like, "Yeah, look, I can get you guys within half a mile of where Starfire is. I am like that positive about my abilities. And up to that, I need you guys to do one thing for me." And they're like, "Name it." And he says, "Buckle up," as he puts the ship into gear. So then we go to some random ass, looks like Amazon jungle or something like that. And we see Starfire is chained up to a tree. And there is some panther or something that's moving around, sniffing her, like trying to attack her. And she just gets up and lunges at the panther. Panther gets out of the way. Starfire's caught back by the chains. She tries to use her energy to break out of the chains, and it doesn't work. So she's left just there helpless in the jungle. And all the while, there's this narration over top from a narration box that we don't recognize. And it's pretty easily apparent that it's Blackfire, who showed up at the end of the Christmas annual along with Hellspawn to show that she was actually kind of responsible for some of this. And it turns out this whole thing that she's doing was something that Corey did to herself before to snap her out of drug use. And so now Blackfire's doing it again to her against her will. And right here at the end, she shows up before Corey with this giant-ass light weapon and says, "Oh, I'm sorry it had to come to this, but if anyone was going to put you out of your misery, it was going to be your sister." So, yeah. Yep, that's a book. That's about the most I could say about that. Look, fine, you want to bring back Crux, you want to speedrun his, okay, I'm back to the side of heroism or whatever, or even if he's just an anti-hero, fine, whatever, do it. I didn't even know about this alien drug stuff. Like, don't get me wrong, I've seen her taking drugs beforehand, but like, this really did come out of nowhere, you know? I'm piecing together what I think the story is meant to be, that like, she was so upset at something that happened that she turned back to a previously never mentioned before drug use thing, but like, that's Arsenal's storyline. Why are they giving it to Starfire? I don't know. Regardless, it's an okay issue. Art's fine. It's just kind of like 5 storylines that I don't care about all coming together in a way that I guess on paper sounds fine, but like, it's still a bunch of storylines I don't care about. So yeah, I'm gonna say it's 6. Sure. Batman Superman number 18, written by Greg Pak, art by Ardian Syaf. So last issue we had the killer that was going after Superman's closest friends and whatnot. No luck finding him, but Batman is saying how he wants to use Lois Lane as a bait, essentially, but he hasn't told Clark yet. So we open up this issue with the man who was killed, the one who was dressed up as Superman back in the first issue of this arc, and it's his funeral. His name was Carlos Gutierrez. He was unemployed. He barely had any money, but he spent every weekend down at the children's hospital dressed up as Superman just to make him happy. And we see the funeral is very sparsely attended, and Superman's like, I really want to be there, but like, I gotta deal with this guy. And we see he is telling all of this to the Fortress of Solitude, and he's like, look, you were destroyed during Brainiac's attack during Superman Doomed. I know that you need like a month and a half to get repaired, but I am out of options and I need you to tell me what the hell is going on. And the structure throws up this Kryptonian text that says something, and then we see a small crack start to form, and Supergirl just plows in, being like, don't do this, you idiot. If you do this, you're going to end up breaking the fortress beyond repair. It just needs to be able to survive a little bit. And Superman's like, what the hell are you doing here? You're supposed to be watching Jimmy Olsen and Perry White. And he's like, oh, Crypto's on that. Don't worry about it, which I'd be a little bit worried about that. But regardless, she's like, look, hey, it's not just your friends you have to worry about. Remember Kandor? Kandor's a thing. They were bottled by Brainiac, and now they're lost somewhere in the Phantom Zone. That's like, we need to have the fortress working if we want to be able to get them out of here again. And I had a friend there. Her name was Tally Czar, and she was my closest friend, and goddammit, you better save her. And Clark's like, okay, this is what the killer wants. It wants us arguing with each other to choose who lives and dies. I'm not going to play his game. You're right. We're going to save them all. And then all of a sudden there's this laughter, and he's like, ha 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 ha. And Superman's like, come out and fight me, you little punk. And he's like, no, this is much more fun. And we see this big ball of windy energy around the fortress that is seemingly him. But Superman gets a call from Batman. And Superman's like, hey, Batman, he's listening in. He can hear us, so, like, don't say anything too sensitive. And Batman's like, don't worry about it. I had Zatanna put a spell on this frequency. He can't hear it, which is crazy. But regardless, he's like, look, I told you that he's your Joker, which means he's going to go after the most vulnerable people in your life, the people who bring you the most light, the people that you can't live without. Like, he went after Batgirl. He went after Robin. He didn't actually go after Batgirl. That was more of a Jim Gordon thing. But regardless, you've got an advantage, is that most of your friends are nearly invulnerable, if not actually invulnerable. So he's going to want to go after somebody who's vulnerable. Who can you think of to be vulnerable? And he's like, he'd go after anyone on the planet. I love this planet. Everyone on it. He would do it just to piss me off. And it's like, yeah. But he would have already done that. He wants to break your heart. Who do you really love? Who do you confide in the most? Who's the most important person? And Superman's like, well, who are you talking? And then in comes the voice of Lois Lane saying like, hey, honey, don't play dumb. I've told Batman everything. Our secret romance, how you proposed to me on the dark side of the moon. And Supergirl's like, are you serious, bro? I thought you were dating Wonder Woman. Superman's like, this is crazy, Batman. And Batman's like, yeah, I'm surprised you managed to keep it from me for so long, but I know you wanted to hide it badly, but unfortunately we are out of time on this. So Superman very quickly realizes what's going on. He's like, oh God, you're doing okay. So he takes off like a bullet. Supergirl follows up like, wait, where are we going? And Batman's like, yeah, the enemy's smart. He's going to figure this out soon. We're going to use Lois as bait. I'm going to put trackers on her, and wherever the bullet comes from, we'll be able to follow it back from its source. And Superman's like, you're saying going to, but like, you're already doing this. I can tell by the tone of your voice. So I have to get there. And you know the killer's listening. There's no spell on this frequency. Like, all of this was just planned out in advance, where you're going to let Lois get shot and pretend that she's this important to me, and then, like, we'll be able to backtrack it, but then you want me to come in and save her. So he's like, oh, yeah, interesting plan, but how do you want to stop Lois from getting killed? And Batman's like, oh, we'll work on that. So Superman and Lois are coming down from the north. Meanwhile, coming from the east is this super fast entity that no one knows what it is, and it's coming right from it. It'll be 15 seconds, and Lois is like, oh, I mean, I'm scared, but, you know, I would have kicked your ass if you didn't bring me into it. And Superman arrives just before the bullet. He puts his hand out to stop it, and it dodges around his hand. And then Supergirl puts her hand in as well, and it dodges around her hand. And the voice is like, oh, you think you're clever. You tried to trick me, but I know who the real target is. And the bullet hits Batman square in the chest. He goes off this cliff that they were set up on, and he's like, yep, this is the one you confide in. This is the one you would miss the most if anyone else, if you were to die. It's always Batman. And so Superman catches Batman. Some kryptonite gas is coming out of his suit, and he's like, sorry, had to put some kryptonite in the body armor. So Supergirl's like, what? You got shot? And he's like, yeah, but he was prepared. So he brings Batman up to the top, and he's like, you really did plan all this, didn't you? And he's like, well, I mean, I didn't expect I'd be the one to get shot, but, whatever. Superman's like, so how are you planning on protecting Lois? He's like, you were my plan. So at that point, they get Batman. They have to start getting the bullet out of him, and as they reach inside and pull out the bullet, they see it is not a bullet. It is a Kandorian. It is a miniature shrunken Kryptonian who is fired at Mach speed into Batman. So we go to Shade, which is the Shade headquarters, which is a super tiny little shrunken place. So they're able to examine the Kryptonian in full scale. And it's like, yeah, this guy's name is Konko. All of my records indicate that he was a super chill guy, never had an enemy. He had no reason to hate us. I have no idea why he would have been fired at us. And they start thinking, okay, someone found Kandor, someone woke them up, and someone convinced them or forced them into doing this. And Lois is like, it's Brainiac. It's got to be Brainiac. It's like, no, we just did Brainiac. We're not doing a twofer. There's no way it's Brainiac again. She's like, all right, well, my money's on Brainiac. And at that point, Supergirl's like, look, this isn't getting us anywhere. My friend Tali is in there. Don't you remember Tali? And Ray Palmer, who works with Shade, is like, I might be able to help. We followed the bullet's trajectory backwards. We found it in the black sand desert of Iceland. And on one of the beaches, we see that the sand has been turned into glass. And our radar doesn't pick up much, but we can pick up that's right in the middle of that. There's a bottle. And we don't know what it is, but we probably should be careful going there because it's probably awful. And we see that in the bottle city of Kandor, which is on that beach, is a bunch of Kandorians, including Tali, the friend who's super pissed off. They all have red eyes and they're ready to fight. So apparently the Kandorians hate Superman now. I think this happens every 3 weeks. It's a fine enough issue. I like the reveal of the Kandorian. I think that's a end of issue thing though. I don't quite know how I feel about having this little extra bit at the end at Shade headquarters. That feels like it should be the beginning of the next issue, but it's a well enough paced issue. I like Superman and Batman's interactions here. Overall, solid. So I'm going to say it's a 7.5, and we'll see what comes up next time. Supergirl number 38, written by Kate Perkins and Mike Johnson, art by Emanuela Lupacchino. So last issue, we had a whole thing where the Crucible was looking for Con-El, the Superboy, and then also our little Crucible team went to one of their planets, Savo's planet, and his brother was killing his family because they were all Crucible flunkies. So this picks up in Rome, where Superboy's been in a monastery for a while, but it turns out there's a Comic-Con going on right outside of the Colosseum, and Superboy, holding a copy of Justice League 3000, is like, oh, I left the monastery to see if I could fit in, and I feel I'm still figuring out my place in this world, but I could have a normal life amongst all these people dressed like nerds. So we then cut back over to the planet Go, where we see Savo's fighting against his brother, and everyone else has got their own equal match as well. And the brother has been disowned. They go through the whole thing of Crucible is stupid because we were the best students, but they couldn't control us, and so they kicked us out, and blah, blah, blah. We see that all of the I'm going to call them villains. I mean, this book tries to do a thing with like, but do they have a point though? All the villains are like, oh, we were expelled for not following orders, but it looks like Crucible can't even teach you guys anything anymore. And so one by one, they all start getting like beat up a little bit. Supergirl comes in to fight Rojo, the brother of Savo, and like starts putting him in a chokehold. And Rojo's like, all right, well, that's enough. Hey, Vax. And he talks to the big bug-looking one, who then emits some sort of scream light thing that puts everybody into a stasis so that they are unable to move. And Rojo's like, haha, shoulda learned about our abilities first. This is what his species does to capture its prey. Anyway, we outie, we're going to some backwater world. And they go through a portal and disappear. So Savo, everyone starts being able to move again. Savo goes over to his father and mother, who are both dying, and he's like, look, we can't take them through a portal, otherwise they're not going to make it. I got to stay here with them. And everyone else is like, okay, but we need to go after them or else we're not going to have another chance. So we got to find out where this backwater world is. And Comet's holding like some psychic link to keep track of him. And Supergirl's like, no, I'm not going to leave my friend. Us friends stick together. And Savo's like, look, I appreciate it. I get the point you're going for here. But please go kick his ass. Please go do that now. And so at that point she does. They open up a portal to go to the backwater world, which is, wouldn't you know it, Earth. And they arrive in Rome. And Comet's like, I'm having trouble keeping track of them. It's like there's a whole bunch of nerds nearby. And then, wouldn't you know it, he looks over and sees the whole Romacon thing going on with someone that is dressed as Supergirl. And Supergirl's like, why are you dressed like me? What's going on? So Comet goes over to a booth where it's selling some fake weapons. And he's like, oh my god, it's a Cliquet dissector. These things are super rare. And the girl that's with him is like, yeah, well, this is clearly fake. So we'll try to find them. Everyone, let's keep a track. And Supergirl uses her hearing to hear a commotion literally in the Coliseum, which is Rojo attacking Superboy, saying, hey, I've been looking for you for a long time. I got big plans for you. And everyone else is just running away from these aliens that showed up. So Supergirl starts barking orders like, all right, take out Vax first. Comet, you do that. Max, the name of the girl, is getting the people out to safety. And Max is like, I'm sorry, why is the new girl giving orders? Regardless, I'll do it. So Kara comes in and starts trying to help Superboy. Comet blows up Vax's head. Just straight up like scanners. Like, pfft, done. Max helps defend from a bunch of people who are getting attacked. And she goes after the villain girl who's like her equal and creates some weird psychic daggers that she just starts throwing into their throats. Like, they don't mess around here. We see Superboy gets free of Rojo and is like, hey, I don't need any help. What are you doing here? And she's like, what are you doing here? So Rojo goes to attack him again and Superboy just lays him out. There's a guy dressed as a zombie who's just recording this and says, greatest convention ever. We see that they have a computer droid bot that also is apparently evil, and it says, hey, you're all tools of Crucible. Don't believe you believe their lies and you deny the truth. And he says it in this weird, like, commented code form. But he's like, oh, you deny, you die. So he's attacking Comet. Supergirl comes in and continues attacking Rojo. We see Max is going after the other girl. And because Comet's been knocked down by the droid so much, Max says, oh, if he dies, so will you, as she seemingly cracks her spinal column. And then Max goes after the droid as well. So at that point, Rojo's like, all right, well, you know what? I am not losing this battle. I am tactically retreating. And he opens up a portal, takes the droid with him, and says, tell my brother I'll see him soon. So they go back through the portal. Comet's not doing so hot. He's literally fading out right now, so they got to get back to the Crucible. And Maximo's like, hey, we're not going without the clone. He's the real mission here. I had my orders to get him to the Crucible. And she's like, what? You knew that Superboy was here, and you didn't say anything. You just followed him in so we can get close to him? And he's like, yes, that is exactly what's happening. It's like, well, what? You know, the droid was saying stuff about not trusting Crucible. Should I be, like, worried about that? And Maximo's just like, now's not the time to discuss it. We're taking him with, whether you like it or not. And she gets in the way and says, oh, well, if you want to take him, you got to go through me. So Yep, that's a thing. It's all right. I don't dislike it, but it just feels very haphazard in a way. It feels like, oh, okay, yeah, we have this thing with Superboy that we've been setting up. That's fine, but somehow he's related to this plot that the villains have, and it's not just the Crucible thing. And these villains, like, they just showed up at the end of last issue. They aren't something we've been establishing up until now. So I don't know. It feels like a lot of stuff was thrown together to make Superboy a bigger deal than just, oh, we want to have a clone army for the Crucible. That's kind of the thing that we want Kryptonian clones. Let's do that. So I don't know. It's a little weird. Having it set at a con is also like, all right, fine. There's no reason to have this except for having Khan wanting to be able to blend in a little bit, which is only literally the first page. So it was mainly just to get him out of the monastery, which put it in the monastery. That would also be cool. Have that happen. Yeah, no, I think this one's probably like a 6.5 for me. It's not that great, but it still at least has some potential. I just hope that the story can really focus down and figure out what it wants to do here. Green Lantern New Guardians number 38, written by Justin Jordan, art by Diogenes Neves and Ronan Cliquet. Last issue was just wrapping up all the Godhead stuff, so whatever was going on there. One thing you need to know happened is that Black Hand summoned a bunch of monsters from the Source Wall, and then they went wild. So we open up on a random-ass planet, an alien ship is about to take off. One mother throws her child onto the ship to be able to get the kid away. And she's like, oh, please be fast enough to get away. As we see that the thing that they're outpacing is this giant-ass Titanic monster that has been ravaging their planet. And as it is about to kill this woman, all of a sudden she's like, oh my god, what is happening? And we see that the monster is being consumed into some sort of goopy-looking black hole portal. So we go over to Zamaron, home in the Star Sapphires, where Carol Ferris is just kind of hanging out on a cliffside, looking at her ring. Kyle comes up, is like, you thinking of chucking that away? And she's like, no, I'm not. That's the problem. And he's like, okay. Want to talk about it? And he's like, yeah, I guess it's time for talking. He's like, cool. You want to go first? And she just stays silent. He's like, I really want you to go first. Okay, I'll go first. And then she just throws out the big one. She says, I love you. And he's like, oh, I love you too. And she just stops and is like, no. That's the problem. Look, I broke up with Hal. And like, that was backtracking. I love you, but I also love this. And she puts back on the ring and she starts flying around. She's like, not just the flying, but just like all of it, being able to see the universe, all this. It's amazing and I love it. But in order to do this, I have to be in love. That's the whole Star Sapphire thing. I broke up with Hal and then almost immediately went over to you. And I don't know whether or not it's genuine or whether or not I'm using you to be able to do this. And Kyle's like, I know, I get it. I've had my doubts at all. And like, maybe it was just because we were also the only two normal humans and the rest of our friends were tiny blue guardians. But like, I wasn't sure if this was for real or if I was just your new power battery. And she's like, all right, I would not put it that way, but what are you saying? And he's like, I don't know, and I'm not sure about me either. I mean, we had a whole thing where I was out of control of my powers and I temporarily transformed you into my dead ex-girlfriend, and like, that's a lot to unpack. Am I over her? I don't think so. I don't think I ever will be, but like, it's not fair to you for me to want you to be her, if that makes sense. And I'm sorry for doing that. And she's like, yeah, so am I. And it's like, all right, so what does it mean? It's like, well, I don't know. A lot of damage happened because of me and I need to try to fix that. And she's like, okay, so that's it. And they almost get close to kissing. And then all of a sudden, a giant-ass fireball just appears right above them in the sky saying, like, something approaching at light speed. So it hits the planet, huge explosion. Kyle throws up some shields. Carol, he's like, are you good? And she's like, yeah, I'm fine, but what about the planet? And the ring's like, no Star Sapphires were killed. Everything's fine. And it's like, cool, awesome. What the hell was that? So they go down to check it, and once the smoke clears, we see it is the same giant crazy beast monster from the other planet. And they recognize, because of the image burned into its head, It came from Black Hand's thing, but also it's got the White Lantern symbol burned into its head. And it's like, okay, this is a message. So what the hell is it doing here? So Kyle goes to like fly out, follows the trajectory of where it was coming from. And Carol's like, dude, you were about to just zoom off, go to save the day, and do all that without so much as even saying goodbye. And he's like, this is my fight. You're not involved in this, Carol. Whatever the Titan meant, it was meant for me. And she's like, yeah, and it hit the home planet of my core. Like, let's not ignore that. Plus, like, what do you even plan to be doing? Have you talked to the Guardians? And he's like, nah, we're not doing the Guardians. I don't want to talk to the Guardians. They suck. And it's like, fine, but you still need to be able to talk to me, okay? You're not going to do this alone. And you got all this screwed up baggage on you, along with me. You're not alone, okay? And he's like, all right, fine. It's like, cool, let's go find out who did this. So they get down to the planet. It's in ruins. Immediately, Kyle, like, peters out for a second. He just loses his powers and falls down. And then he gets hit by a giant white scythe that's being held by that mother from earlier, the alien mother, saying like, oh, I am not unaware or unarmed. And Carol just blasts apart her weapon for a second. Kyle comes to, just being like, yeah, all right, I'm good. So the mom's just like, fine, finish this. And he's like, I don't know who you are or what you think I'm all about, but that's not what I really do. And I'm like, she's like, I recognize that symbol. And she points up to a building over across the town, and it has the White Lantern symbol made out of the corpses of people of her race. And Kyle's like, oh God, no. Get back, Carol. He's here. And the word here is then shifted over into a black text box. And Carol's like, oh, Kyle, we should be flying or fighting, something like that. And Kyle's blasting away as much of the black goop as humanly possible as it starts swarming around him and saying how it's everywhere. And the black text box is like, yes, I am. You are not leaving. This is the end. And he pulls down Carol as well. And as the black goop takes form, we see that it is Oblivion. And if you don't remember Oblivion, shortly after Kyle went beyond the source wall, he kind of bled off some part of his own psyche that was a darker side of him, and now that's what this is. All right, so I really, really like the concept that Carol is kind of like, as much as it is bad for the idea of like a female character that they are just forced to define themselves by the relationship to a man, I love that concept for her powers, where it's literally she has to do this or else she doesn't have her power set. Like, it really allows for a good examination of like, why am I doing this? Do I actually like this person? But like, in order to do her stuff, she has to do it. I love that idea. Don't like Oblivion. Oblivion is kind of dumb. I don't know if Oblivion is an original character to this run or if it's something that's pulled back from like Silver Age. Well, I guess Kyle came about in the 90s, so Dark Age. But regardless, it's two battling things here, and I really like one of the things, and I think the other thing's kind of dumb. And unfortunately, I think the Oblivion thing is going to take precedence over these last three issues here. So as I hope we get more of an examination of like Carol and how her powers work and like how this relationship is going to function, because that's just an awesome idea to me. The Oblivion thing, if they can do something cool with it, I hope they can, but I'm not that hopeful. Yeah, beyond that, it kind of balances itself out, so I think I'm just going to give it a 7 overall. But like, I really like that concept here. If you want to give me a Star Sapphire series, give me a Tom King miniseries nowadays, like not New 52, but like nowadays, examining that's super cool to me. So yeah, 7. Justice League number 38, written by Geoff Johns, art by Jason Fabok. So, last issue we had Patient Zero finally being taken down, or at least close to taken down by Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman. And then Batman got exposed. He now has virus in him. So this picks up with the red phone ringing in the president's office. We see no one's there. They're all in a bunker. And Steve Trevor is telling them through Zoom call, hey, It's crazy out there. The virus can survive indefinitely without a human host. It's just around. Justice League's dealing with it, but you guys stay in the bunker. And the president's like, what do we do, man? And it's like, we are looking for patient zero, and then we'll be able to get a cure based off of that. And like, what happens if Lex Luthor fails? It's like, well, billions will die. So let's hope that doesn't happen. So we see the patient zero fight going on. Batman is exposed, and we have Steve Trevor walking them through the basics of what the metavirus does. And it's like, well, one, it can take place like stage 1, hours, seconds, but it's like the flu. Then it starts to transform and it turns the human into a metahuman. Results may vary. They get some sort of superpower. And then stage 3, the complete breakdown of their body. So as Patient Zero's like smacking down Superman into the pavement, Batman comes out and he blasts a supersonic voice beam into Patient Zero, knocking him into buses and cars. And he's out for the fight. Batman also gets woozy. He starts going out. Superman's like, what did you do, man? Batman's like, I'm blind, but like I can still see via sounds. And Superman's like, oh my god, did you actually get like bat powers? You did ultrasonic like mapping. And you seriously? And he's like, yeah, maybe it's a subconscious thing. Maybe that's how it works. I don't know. But that is what is happening here. Plus, I think Luthor's may not be telling us something. So at that point, right before Bruce passes out, he's like, look, Luthor's been lying. He's hiding something. I hear a voice. But then he passes out. So we see Superman and Wonder Woman getting Patient Zero and Batman back to Luthor. As they do so, Patient Zero says, we. And then we see a horde of people all emerging from the dust saying, us. So we go 5 miles outside of Metropolis, and there's a huge, explosion. Lex Luthor was being shot at the end of the last issue, and he's calling in saying, like, yep, I killed him, he's dead. But then as the smoke clears, turns out his head was encased in ice, super hard ice from Captain Cold. And Cold's like, hey, you should know ice is the most powerful thing in the universe. It can carve mountains away. It can do all that. You want to fight against my cold gun? So Cold starts firing against Bullet. Bullet starts firing back, and he's like, look, I'll just kill you and then I'll kill him. And as he's firing back, Cold freezes all the bullets in midair and says, I have a cold field activated around me, which reduces the motion of your bullets to close to zero. Flash is stopped by this. You think you would have a chance? So he fires off his ice gun at Bullet, and he's like, look, the mistake you made was you got in the way of me and my weekly paycheck, and I always get paid. So he goes over, he lets Luthor out of the ice thing, and he's like, yeah, all right, thanks, but I need to get some answers here. So he goes over to Neutron, the guy who started all this, and he's like, I'm going to pull him out of his coma because I need some answers on who's trying to kill me. And Lena Luthor comes out being like, hey, if you wake him up, he's going to straight up die. Like, you could hurt him. And Lex is like, this is literally all because of him. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with crossing that boundary. Can you please get back to your room? And she's like, okay. So he wakes up Neutron, and he's like, hey, Neutron, here's your entire backstory. You were a security guard. You got doused in, like, nuclear whatever. You were able to absorb it. Superman stopped you, and then you were a gun for hire. But here's the thing. You lost your powers, so now you just have every form of cancer. That's what you got right now. You could probably feel the cancer growing inside your containment suit right now. And he's like, can I talk to my wife? And he's like, no, you can't talk to your wife. You're going to talk to me, and you're going to tell me everything you know about who the hell wants me dead. So at that point, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Patient Zero come in. And it's like, hey, we got Patient Zero. And Neutron's like, hey, please don't let me die. And Lex is like, I'll get to work. So he takes some of Patient Zero's blood. He does a test on it. He's still saying us. We see Batman saying us. And Lex looks at the blood and is just like, crap. All right, that's not going to work. His blood is too messed up. I thought that it would have been something, but it wasn't. Superman, I need a vial of your blood. And Superman's like, what? I'm not infected. And he's like, yeah, you are. And it's like, what are you talking about? I was like, I infected you 4 years ago. During one of our first fights, I infected you with this. I was hoping it would take away your powers. It didn't. You fought against it. You have the antibodies to this thing. And then I put it in cold storage. And Superman just slams him up against the wall, being like, you knew about this while people were dying? And he's like, yes, and I didn't want to play this card. But, like, this virus was never meant for them. It was meant for Kryptonians that would escape the Phantom Zone. I wanted a way to be able to take away their powers. That's it. And Superman's like, stop lying. He's like, no, I promise you, that's it. That's my intention. So Wonder Woman's like, look, like it or not, if you got the antibodies, we got to let him do what he's going to do. And Lex is like, yeah, seriously. And also, I would like invulnerability or immunity to any charges that you think that you're going to be able to place against this. That's the only way I'm moving forward here. And before you can do anything else, Batman's up out of bed, blasts Lex and Superman through the wall with his sonic powers, and he's doing the whole like Ultron at the beginning of Age of Ultron, like limping around. He's like, you are such an odd species. And we see all the other heroes start waking up. They start getting out of bed. They start speaking with a hive mind, saying, we are us. And Lex is like, oh, I was afraid this was going to happen. And the virus says, you believe you are the dominant species. You are incorrect. As now the entire infected Justice League are going to fight against Lex, Superman, and Wonder Woman. Cool. I mean, that's really just like, boil this issue down. What is it? It's a bunch of cool moments. It's a bunch of like, oh, wow. It just keeps doing that every like 4 pages. If I have to give special like kudos to this, Jason Fabok's art is fantastic. And I do like the reveal from Lex of like, yeah, we already tried this. I have a solution. I was just hoping that I wouldn't have to like reveal this card yet. That's the big one for me. If I have to give it a little bit of a knock, I think the Captain Cold just having a constant, I mean, it might be tech, but it's not implied to be tech, a constant cold field around him that just takes away kinetic energy. Surely that would affect him, right? Like, surely he'd be impacted by that, but no, I guess not. It's a very well done issue. I'm all right with it. I'm curious to see how this is going to wrap up over the next issue or two. I'm going to say this is I'll give it an 8. It's a low 8, but it's still an 8. I think it's more that I want to see what the payoff is to this hive mind thing. Because if it's something stupid, I'm going to be a little disappointed. But it's got a lot of potential, and I trust Geoff Johns for this, so we'll see if it earns the 8 next issue as well. Wonder Woman number 38, written by Meredith Finch, art by David Finch. So, last issue ended with the Themyscirian Amazon saying, hey, Wonder Woman, you got to stick with us for a while. You keep on bailing, and she bailed anyway. And then we see one of the older Amazons makes Donna Troy. Just straight up creates her. So we open with a bunch of Amazons dead. They're fighting against an army, they are an army fighting against a dragon. And we see Dessa's leading the charge. It's just like, oh, we must fight, Amazon. Diana, could you maybe show up, please? And we see, battlefield's wounded, all this stuff. Wonder Woman does end up arriving. She heads and talks to one of them, saying like, hey, where's Dessa? And she's like, I'm tending to the wounded. Does it look like I have time for you? So Wonder Woman heads to the hospital, the makeshift room, and is like, Dessa, where is she? And the head nurse is like, everyone here is far too injured. We don't have time for names. But someone speaks up like, she's on the beach. She stayed back to give us more time to escape. So Wonder Woman heads back out to the beach. And Dessa is wounded gravely. She's going to die. And she's like, we weren't strong enough for the dragon. We needed you. Why didn't you come? And Wonder Woman's like, oh, I promise you, your sacrifice will not be in vain. So she gets over, flies to where the dragon is, immediately is ready to lay the smack down, and then the dragon just bows to her. And he's like, what? Huh? And a voice off to the side says, surprised? You shouldn't be. Ares kept all sorts of pets. You have brought this chaos to us. You being war brings conflict wherever you are. And all of the tribes of the Amazons have splintered because you weren't here to lead us, and they fought amongst each other, and then Ares' pets showed up and we all died. This is all your fault. And this mysterious Amazon draws her sword and starts coming after Wonder Woman, saying like, oh, your arrogance has been costly, pay the price now. And then Wonder Woman wakes up. It's all a dream. However, she is doused in blood, and I'm not sure where the blood came from, but we do see strife is watching through a portal saying like, oh, well, I don't know if that'll ever wash out, but I'll make sure that those stains are permanent. So we then see the old Amazon is giving some ceremonial armor to Donna Troy, saying like, look, we have enemies from within. They seek to unravel our lives. Themyscira needs a savior. Take your place and fulfill your destiny. So we cut back over to London, where Wonder Woman is talking to Hessia. And it's basically saying like, I don't know what they want from me. And Hessia's like, they want you to be the queen, man. That's literally your job for them. And she's like, yeah, but I set them up with a council so that I don't have to be there all the time. They can rule via democracy. We can move out of those weird, like, turn of the millennium, 2 millenniums ago ages that the Amazon seems stuck into. And it's like, yeah, okay, but they like their traditions, and it's really hard to change that stuff. You can't expect it to happen overnight. And Wonder Woman's like, why can't they get with it? And Hessia's like, look, let's talk about you, though. Do you notice anything being worn now? And she's like, well, do I have a beard? And it's like, no, you don't have a beard. But, like, seriously, you are the physical personification of that violence. Like, does it come with anything? Do you feel it? And she's like, that's not who I am. It's like, you don't have a choice. That is who you are now. And if you don't watch out, you might become something like Ares. And Wonder Woman just snaps. It's like, I am nothing like Ares. And Hessia's like, yeah, he used to dumb it down with alcohol. Tell me what you go to dumb it down with. Maybe it's, Justice League and stuff like that. And then, of course, all of a sudden Cyborg calls in saying like, hey, we've got another missing village. Can you come over? So Hessia leads her with like, look, war is cruel and savage, and to be the god of war is more than just a title. You got to be on the lookout for that. So we go over to Peru, where a city has disappeared from the foot of a volcano, and everyone's looking around for it. We see Superman's loaded up. He's going into a cave that was found inside of the volcano, and Wonder Woman and Batman are holding back, and Batman's like, hey, so you're god of war now, right? Does that mean that you bring conflict wherever you go? And she's like, can we not talk about this right now? He's like, I like knowing things, and really feel like this is something I should know about if it's a thing, And Superman calls up being like, hey guys, I found a crazy cavern with a bunch of carvings and stuff like that. Looks insane. And Batman's like, turn on your light, man, we can't see a thing. And he's like, right, sorry. And then as he turns on his light, all of a sudden he gets attacked by this horde of giant insects, and they knock out the cameras. And Wonder Woman's like, Clark, what's going on? So we then cut over to the Council of the Amazons, and the old withered one comes up and just like, hey, where's Diana? She's not here again. And Dessa speaks up saying like, she's fighting with the Justice League. She has other responsibilities. We can't hold that against her. And the council's just like, nah, she should be here. This is one time too many. We're done. Okay. Hey, crazy old lady, show us this perfect Amazon that you say that you've got. And she's like, yes, I have prayed to Hera for salvation, for the perfect Amazon maiden. She truly comes from no man, made of Amazon alone. So check it, a worthy queen. And in walks Donna Troy. And they say, all hail Donna Troy. Hail Queen Donna Troy. So all right. Dream sequence is kind of dumb. Not that I don't like it as an idea. I think it's fine to have her be quietly anxious about the idea of what war means to her, but that's like 7 pages that were devoted to dream sequence, and then all of a sudden it's like, what? Oh god, it didn't actually happen. So, a little bait and switch there. As for the Donna Troy stuff, okay. I'm cool with it. It feels like there's a plan. I'm down with that. If it ends up being that the Donna Troy stuff is just Wonder Woman's going to show up and be like, I'm your queen, I've beaten Donna Troy, but also I've learned the meaning of being a queen or the god of war or whatever. I don't know. I feel like this is setting up a complex story of like the responsibilities of a god and what that means for like the lower level stuff. But at the same time, I know she's not going to stop being in the Justice League. So there's going to have to be some compromise in here. And as long as it's done tactfully, I don't think I'm going to dislike it. But it's currently at the pivot point where like next issue is either going to make or break whether or not it handles it that way. So I think this is probably going to be I'll give it a 7.5. It's close to great, but ultimately it just falls a little bit short for me, and that's mainly because it has the potential to fall pretty hard here. So we'll see what happens next issue. Hopefully we can keep it up, and hopefully we can get a Donna Troy origin that makes some sense. Teen Titans number 6, written by Will Pfeifer, art by Scott Hepburn. So last issue, a couple of randos got some superpowered pills or whatever. They started wrecking town and Teen Titans came in. One girl got hit by a garbage truck, but then wouldn't you know it, she lifted it over her head. So we open up with that, where Tanya Spears is holding it above her head, and it's just like, hey, are we gonna keep fighting these people? And the rest of the Teen Titans are like, who the hell is she? And Cassie's like, I don't know, but I like her. So she tosses aside the garbage truck. We see that the big Hulk stand-in comes in, just being like, she seems strong, but I'm strong too, and I got 200 pounds on her. So he's about to go in, punch her, and she just turns around, throws an uppercut. He's out of the fight. Bunker goes for the Invisible Kid by just making a bunch of purple bricks and just throwing them everywhere. Ends up knocking him out. Cassie throws a single punch, which just knocks out the girl who's got flame powers. That wasn't a problem. And then that just leaves the last one, who's got lightning powers. And so Cassie has to go hold him still while Raven casts some sort of binding spell to shut him down. And as she's casting this spell, we see a couple of her super fans, Danielle and Nathan, are recording this. And they're trying to be like, oh man, get her casting the spell in there. It's going to sound super cool. So as they're recording, we see all the people in the crowd are reacting, and they're all chanting for the Titans. And Robin's like, this is weird. It's weird to get public notoriety like that. And Bunker's like, I kind of like it. And it's like, well, don't. So Raven teleports them all out, and they end back up in the Bunker's apartment. And at this point, they're like, cool. Tanya, who the hell are you, and where the hell did you come from? And she's like, oh yeah, I'm Tanya Spears, I'm Power Girl. And Bunker's like, okay, hold on. I've seen Power Girl. Beast Boy's phone is loaded with pictures of Power Girl. You are not Power Girl. And she's like, well, I'm not her, but I'm the new Power Girl. I'm the replacement. And Bunker's like, replacement? How often does that happen? And Robin's like, yeah, I mean, crazy, right? How often? Anyway, origin time. And for anybody who's been reading World's Finest, this is kind of just recapping everything there. But she worked at Star Industries with 2 R's with Karen Starr, who is Power Girl. And we see that she loved working with Karen. Also, her mom did. Her mom was very close with Karen. And then her mom died because of Desaad. And they take a little panel just to beat that. And they're like, okay, we good. That was sad. Moving on. Karen found a way to get back to her own Earth, Earth 2. But in leaving, she said, hey, I've left a little surprise for you. Enjoy them. And it turns out that as the debris was coming down, because the portal was unstable, she was able to hold it above her head and no problem. So she's also invulnerable, stuff like that. And so she doesn't think she has heat vision or flight, not yet anyway, but she didn't know what she was supposed to do. And then all of a sudden the lawyer showed up and transferred over the rights to the name Power Girl, because I guess it was trademarked, over to her. And so Robin asked, okay, but why were you down there today? And it's like, well, again, I didn't really know what to do with my powers. And I heard about all these Wonder Girl wannabes, so I thought, yeah, that's a good enough place to start. Wannabe heroes. And she's like, yeah, and I wanted to see the Teen Titans because all of you are doing this so wrong. And Robin's like, what? And she's like, look, you guys need to be proactive. You guys, like, even now, we're sitting in your apartment, and there's crazy stuff going on out there. People are dying, and we're just chilling, waiting until, what, some supervillain gets on the news and says, bring me the Teen Titans? Like, we got to go out there and start, like, solving problems before they become problems. You win the battles, you lose the war. And Robin's like, look, I get what you want, especially with your tragic dead mom backstory, but, like, that's not really what we do. And then Cassie stands up and is like, no. Look, I've been feeling the same way for a while here, but, like, I didn't have the guts to say it, so I'm glad she did. I think we should be going out there. We need to be solving actual problems here. And so she leads Tanya over to the window and says, like, hey, let's let these guys think for a while. Me and you, let's go get some air. So they fly out. Meanwhile, Beast Boy, who's still infiltrating Star Labs, keeping an eye on Manchester Black, is calling over to Robin, and he's like, hey, yeah, he watched you guys fight, and then he was listening to something else for a few minutes. I don't know what, I couldn't hear it. But now he's just walking out of the room. Maybe go and do some top secret. So I follow him, and Robin's like, no. Just, you're in Star Labs. You're a little green mouse. Just investigate. Go find out other stuff. But also keep in mind, you are green. Like, try to blend in. And Beast Boy's like, it's Star Labs. I'm sure there's like a whole compound of green mice somewhere. So we go to the musicians, Nathan and Danielle, and they get the sound of Raven doing her spell incantation. And as they identify it, get it all settled out from the rest of the crowd noise, they're like, yes, that's awesome. Let's put it in a song. And then everything around them goes dark. And in front of them is this giant-ass horrific demon with like 14 mouths saying, who dares to disturb my work? And Danielle and Nathan are like, this is the raddest thing ever. Oh my god, it's so cool. So we see Wonder Girl and Power Girl arrive back at Wonder Girl's apartment. Her mom's still there, just reading a magazine. And Wonder Girl's like, hey, look, I know you feel weird about standing up to the Teen Titans like that, but you said what needed to be said. And whether they like it or not, like I think that's the reason Red Robin's going with the Star Labs thing, is that it's helping him to feel legitimate, despite the fact that we're not actually doing what needs to be done here. And all of a sudden there's a knock at the door, and it's like, yeah, they probably teleported over when they realized they were in the wrong. And as she opens up the door, it's Manchester Black. And he's wearing the stupidest looking thing I can imagine. He's wearing British flag body paint and a giant leather jacket duster. And he's like, I was hoping to find you guys here today. And Power Girl, you were super cool out there. Super awesome. And hey, is this sexy woman your mom? And the mom's like, where's your shirt, young man? And he's like, awesome. Anyway, so Cassie's like, what are you doing here, man? And he's like, look, Red Robin's smart. Don't get me wrong. I think he's super smart, but he's not you. And Cassie's like, excuse me? And it's like, yeah. Like, you're 17, right? I'm only 19. Like, it's only a 2-year difference. It's not statutory. Anyway, he's like, yeah, look, you are one of the people that, like, gets it, you know? Like, people, they don't respect you until they need something, until they're begging for you to save the day. And, like, I'm sick of it. Aren't you? And she's like, And he's like, yeah, anyway, this is going to be a little bit awkward, but I need to start begging you to save the day. You see, we've been hearing chatter of something big's coming. Something's going on, and it's going to happen at Star Labs. That's the whole reason we're moving over to the more secure base. But, like, I don't think it's going to be enough. And while it's almost impervious to attack, it's not actually impervious. And we see a janitor gets his hands on Beast Boy. It's like, hey, one of the green mice escaped the enclosure. Do you want me to put it back? And the people on the phone say, yeah, we'll be right there to catch it. And janitor turns around. He sees people there and just like, oh, hey, you made it fast. They start shooting at him, kill the guy, and then move on to the next room. Beast Boy transforms into a gorilla, just being like, hey, man, we got to get you out of here. We got to get you to a doctor. I don't know what the hell's going on here at Star Labs. So he gets him out of the building, runs him away. Meanwhile, Manchester Black is like, yeah, look, we've got bad machines down in the, like, vault. And she's like, yeah, Red Robin said he went down to the vault to shut down that algorithm lady. He's like, no. He went down to the sub-basement. And that's a pretty messed up place, too. But the vault is, like, actually impenetrable. Like, there's no way he would have made it down there. And it can withstand anything up to a nuke. And then he looks out the window, and Star Labs is hit by a nuke. And he's like, that's the thing. We thought our enemy had experimental localized fission device. They're trying to break into the vault. And we see Beast Boys hiding from the nuclear explosion. The rest of the Teen Titans are looking out the window. They see it as well. And Manchester Black's like, look, I need you to get all of your friends and get ready to go over there. Because believe me, as bad as it looks right now, it's going to get so much worse. And we see that whatever this organization is that has a nuke is now lowering themselves down into the vault, saying, hey, find anybody who might still be alive in here. We're going to have them start turning on all of these machines. So, okay. Lot to break down there. Lot going on. Power Girl's fine. She's an okay character. I'm all right with her joining the Teen Titans. In the World's Finest book, I always assumed she was in her 20s, but, kid genius, sure. Take it, leave it. Manchester Black plot, I've lost it. I don't know. I know his shtick is that he wants to, like, exploit the Titans in some way and, like, use them, but the nuke thing's throwing me for a loop. I'm not sure where that really falls into this plan, because it's a big moment. A nuke just hit the middle of this. It's New York. Like, that's not A small feat. Yeah, no, I think this one is interesting enough, but I'm going to give it like, I don't know, a 6.5. And that's more a problem of it's following up after all these other issues. We're on issue 6. I should have a good grip on what character motivations are right now, what's going on. Even if it's supposed to be a mystery, I should have a feeling that there is a mystery here. Whereas throwing a nuke down is just like, nah, this is its own thing, and we're not going to bother telling you what's going on. So I'm going to give it a 6.5, and hopefully we can get a little bit of improvement from there. Trinity of Sin number 4, written by J.M. DeMatteis, art by Yvel Guichet. So last issue, the crew in the new Shadow World went looking for a thing called a redemption box that was buried in a mountain, and then at the last moment as they approached it, Question betrayed them. He was working with the bad person all along. So we open up with a page that shows the Trinity trapped inside of this box as it consumes them. It's clearly a flash forward. But we go back to Nimra, who was summoned by the Question, along with a bunch of bug creatures to attack Phantom Stranger and Pandora. And Phantom Stranger's pissed off. He's like, "How dare you!" And he blasts Question over the edge of the cliff. Pandora casts a spell to catch him and keep him bound up for a while. And Phantom Stranger's like, "I both get it and also dislike the fact that you did that. But regardless, Pandora's like, look, I can get us inside the mountain, but I need you to buy time." And he's like, "I am super drained, but I'll do what I can." And he picks up like a boulder, throws it at them. All these bugs start swarming in and attacking and biting him. Apparently they have a toxic power, and their stingers start hitting him, so he's not doing so hot. But he made sure he didn't surrender. And when the hole in the mountain finally opens up, Pandora's like, "Cool, let's go, keep it going." And Stranger's like, "I can't, go on, it's impossible." And she grasps hands with him, and some sort of energy flow happens. And also she's carrying along Question the whole time. And Stranger's just like, "Leave him, he betrayed us." And she's like, "No, we need him all the same." So she closes up the hole, casts a spell on it. There's no way that they're going to be able to get through. And Nimrod comes down just being like, "Oh, you will not find shelter so easily. I will dissolve this mountain." And then all of a sudden there's a big explosion as she tries to do so, showing that the spell is holding calm. So Phantom Stranger continues like, "No, seriously, Question sucks. Like, ditch him. He betrayed us. Let's get rid of him. We're trying to save the world, and he does this to us." And Pandora's like, "Again, we are the Trinity of Sin. If one of us is left behind, we are now the duo of sin, and that doesn't sell books. Trinity barely sells books. We got to keep them around to stay at full power." And Stranger's like, "Are you sure about that?" And she's like, "Are you sure it's not the case? And I'd rather not risk it. So yeah, whatever." So they get down and they come across the caretaker of the redemption box, who is this giant monster fused of 3 other monsters. And it's like, "Oh, I will defend this with my life," or whatever. And Stranger's like, "We're too exhausted to fight, man. There's no way we could possibly get by." And he's like, "Good, then leave this place." And Stranger's like, "Well, hold on a minute." And he reaches out and touches the caretaker on the head, one of the heads, and it transforms into an angel. And the angel's just like, "How did you know?" And it's like, "I've worked under that little Scottish Terrier god for a while. I can recognize an angel." So the angel lets them by, goes to the cube. They sit and like pray in front of it, and they're like, "Look, if Pandora's box was holding all the ills of mankind, all the evils, this box holds all the goods and the virtues," or whatever. So awesome. And then it was like hugely lit up, and it just very quickly starts to dim away. And it's like, well, all right, it's dying. What do we do? Maybe it's still judging us unworthy. My money's on Question. And Pandora's like, "I think you're right." And he's like, "Cool, we're going to get rid of him?" No. I have a better idea. Here's the thing. He was tortured for months. Who knows what that does to his psyche? We got to help him. He's broken. It's up to us to heal him. we cut back outside the mountain. The bugs are trying to break their way in. They're like, we can't. It's too strong a spell. And Nimrod focuses all of its energy into a singular spot. It creates a crack big enough for the bugs to be shrunken down and go into. So they all start swarming into the mountainside. So Stranger's blasting the box, trying to get it to react. And Pandora's like, nah, man, we gotta help Question. And Stranger's like, nah, look, I know people hated me for a while there because I was, the guy who killed Jesus, so I guess I can learn a thing or two about forgiveness. So Pandora casts an enchantment to magnify the magical bonds between them, and they all start sharing in the pain that Question felt. And it's not just the pain of the past few months. His entire life, ever since he was condemned, he's gone through unspeakable suffering, the struggle to find himself, to know his own existence. And it's basically saying that, he feels that he actually might deserve his condemnation, despite the fact not knowing anything about himself. And so the only people who could possibly understand that are Stranger and Pandora. So they share the pain, and he's like, oh, you took on the burden of my pain. Thank you so much. And Stranger's like, it's just for the world's sake, not you, man. So the three of them get together. They put their hands over the redemption box. But as they do so, in swarm the bugs. They do their best to fight against them, but it's of no use. Stranger's like, wait a minute, I've got an idea. And he takes Question's hand, and the two of them fuse together, like literally a line down the middle where their powers combined. They start attacking the bugs, and Question's fighting against it, so it doesn't last for too long, and they're unable to fight off all the bugs, so Pandora also falls. And as they're all unconscious on the ground, Nimrod steps up being like, you stupid idiots. You let me right through the box. Thanks a lot for that, and now I'm going to make sure that you die, because clearly you're just going to keep being a pain in my ass otherwise. And as Nimrod's about to cast the final blow, Pandora, Stranger, and Question link hands together, along with touching the box, which lights it back up, and then we see the opening page where they are now trapped inside of the box for whatever reason. And Nimrod just picks up the box being like, you stupid idiots. Now you're stuck inside the box. I'm going to take it back to me. I'll unlock its secrets, and then I'll destroy it once and for all. No big deal. And then we go inside the box where we get a panel of Question, Stranger, and Pandora being crucified in this endless desert. And Question's like, what the hell's going on here? And Stranger and Pandora are like, And it's like, yep, well, our suffering has only just begun. I mean, damn, man, you want to put some characters through hell. You already have a nightmare world. You then imprison them in a box into another nightmare world where they're then being crucified for all of eternity. I can't think of any more punishment than that. Damn. It's... Look, this book is always just mid-tier anyway. Like, it's not gonna jump up all of a sudden where I'm like, this is the most incredible issue of all time. It's got a max cap of like 7.5 that this book could ever really reach for me. I really don't like the structure of it where it does, this has been every issue, it does this jump ahead to like the second to last page and then jumps back. It seems like it's supposed to be an eye catch, but it's always like the weirdest little monologue associated with it. I don't know. Beyond that, it's an alright issue. It's not great. At least I could really follow everything that's happening. That's not a guarantee for this sort of book. So I'm going to say this is a 6.5. It just doesn't feel like a 7. As much as I don't have that much to specifically knock on this, I just couldn't give it a 7 in good faith. So yeah, we only got 2 more issues. We'll see how this really wraps up. I'm sure the world will be fine to some extent, and maybe Question will stop being such a dick. Batman Eternal number 42, written by Snyder, Tynion, Fawkes, Higgins, and Seeley, art by Jed Dougherty. So, last issue was setting up the whole nanobot thing. Turns out it was Mad Hatter. This issue's following up on it, where all of Gotham City, certain people all of a sudden just start eyes glowing blue and all marching towards this warehouse. And Mad Hatter's like, yes, lucky I have the time to pull all of these strings and make a proper stage for these puppets. And we see Harper, Red Robin, we see Red Robin, Red Hood, and Batgirl have all been taken control of. Harper now in her Blue Jay costume, at least I think that's what she called, maybe Bluebird, is jumping across rooftops, stumbling over herself. She's like, yeah, real nice. All right. So I'm pretty much the only person left. I'm going to do a recording just to say everything that's going on here. Mad Hatter taking over the city. Something about making them all love him. Don't worry about it. I've put together a suit using code that I pulled from Cullen's nanobots in order to not be affected by nanobots. So that's my goal, to shut down the machine. Here we go. And so she jumps in through a skylight, and we cut over to Stephanie Brown. Now, Stephanie Brown, last issue, she was taken captive by a dude named Killshot, and she wakes up here in her room where her mother is waiting. And Stephanie's like, what? Mom, what's going on? The mom's like, don't worry, you're safe, you're here, everything's fine, we need to talk for a bit. And she's like, yeah, about you and Dad trying to kill me? And it's like, whoa, okay. I had no idea your dad would go so far. I didn't know that he was going to come after you. Like, it's look, I would have gotten us away much sooner. And she's like, us? And it's like, yeah, no, I've been trying for weeks to find you. I sent that kill shot guy after you to protect you, to help take you in. Like, you're safe now, though, that's all that matters. And I promise you we're going to get a good night's sleep, and then tomorrow we are hitting the road. We are out of Gotham for good. You don't have to worry about anything else. And she's like, you can't promise that, Mom. It's like, yes, I can. I'm your mother. I will protect you. I'm not ever going to lose you again. And they hug each other, and she looks super happy about that. The mom, I mean. So we cut back over to Harper. The antenna is active, controlling all the people in Gotham. She starts getting attacked by nanobot swarms, and they can't do anything to her, so the suit is working. And she's like, all right, awesome, give me your best shot, zombies. And she gets knocked off of this catwalk, crashes down to the ground below. And Mad Hatter's like, whoa, you should be infected. What the hell's going on here? Just like, I'm not. And as she's trying to like banter back, she sees Cullen. She sees her brother and immediately runs over, gives him a big hug, just being like, oh, God, thank God you're okay. Look, I got to get you out of here. Smoke bomb. And she reaches into her utility pouch and pulls out a batarang accidentally and throws it down. She's like, God, how does anyone keep track of all these pouches? So Cullen's nanobot swarm comes out, hits her in the face. We see that the Bat family that's being controlled grabs hold of her, and Mad Hatter's just like, look, everyone here needs to take their medicine. It's super important. We're a pro-Hatter establishment. And Harper's like, you're making people love you. Doesn't that defeat the whole purpose? Mad Hatter's like, oh, to be young and naive. But then Harper's like, yeah, I must be naive because I always thought you were cool. And Hatter's like, what? What? And she's like, yeah, I'm into tech stuff. And like, you're an electronics god, man. You made mind control a thing. That's super impressive. And Hatter's like, oh my God, am I blushing? Oh my God, I never, what? And then Harper just kicks him in the face. So manages to knock off his hat. We see she uses an electrical shock built into her suit to take out the rest of the Bat family that's holding her down. And so she goes over, picks up Mad Hatter's hat and says, this definitely looks better on me. And as she puts it on, she uses the mind control ability to blow up the antenna, freeing everyone else from the control. She goes over to Cullen, who's recovering, and just immediately latches on, gives him a big hug, and just like, you have no idea what I've gone through to save your stupid ass. And as Mad Hatter is starting to get back up, ready to fight back, Batman comes in, just takes him out, just like, tell me who you're working for. And he's like, oh, Batman, why would you ever think? And he punches him in the face and just like, say it, tell me who you're working for. And he points to his jacket pocket. Batman pulls out one of the notes that says, you have been cordially invited to the fall of Gotham, blah, blah, blah. And Red Robin's like, is that the same note Hush had? And Batman's like, yeah. He's like, how do you want to handle this? He's like, I don't know. But, I saw the people being nano-controlled back here. How did you find this place, Robin? And Tim's just like, actually, it was Harper. She figured it out. And Batman's like, guess we have a lot to talk about, don't we? So we cut to later. Harper's on the roof talking to Tim. And Tim's like, hey, look, everyone looks like they're going to be okay. That's thanks to you. And Harper's like, I thought you guys would be mad at me. And it's like, I mean, I'm not happy, but like, I feel like I'm the one who kind of forced you into this sort of life. And, you wouldn't have had to get involved if I didn't rush in there headlong and all that. And Harper's like, man, you're just sounding just like Mad Hatter. You didn't force me to do anything. I chose this because it's what I want to do more than anything. And I'm going to keep doing it again and again and again. So whether you want me to help or not, or whether you want to help me or not, it's fine. But like, stop doing this self-pity thing, man. And so Red Robin's just like, all right, well, I could use that suit, the code suit that you built. And she's like, yeah, I'm sure you could. So then we cut over to Stephanie. She wakes up in the moonlight, gets some milk from the fridge, and she sees that her mom has been bound up in the kitchen. And as she goes to untie her gag, we see that Stephanie is attacked with some sort of chloroform. She's knocked out. And who's behind it but Catwoman, who says, oh, lucky for me, I like a challenge. So Catwoman's got, spoiler now, Harper's now possibly an official member of the Bat family, or is at least going to be talked to by Batman in a more official capacity. And all I can think about is Batman number 28, where it was a sneak peek. It was a look ahead at like, oh, here's where Batman Eternal will eventually get to. We're in the last 10 issues of the series. That was a really, really far in-depth sneak peek, you know? It's an all right issue. I mean, it is just wrapping up the Nano stuff. I think I actually like the Stephanie Brown stuff more, and it's barely in this at all. But only just because, like, it recenters her character. It gives her a new thing that she's going to be working with, the Catwoman stuff. I remember enjoying that, but we'll see how much of that actually is true to form. Beyond that, I think I'm going to give this issue a flat 7. It's all right, not great, but we're down the home stretch now. We're seeing what all the last 10 issues of this series can do. Future's End, number 38, written by Azrael, Lemire, Jurgens, and Giffen, art by Andy McDonald. So, this issue picks up with Joker-Batman combo cyborg from the future attacking Tim Drake and Terry McGinnis outside of Tim Drake's bar. He fires off machine gun shots, and Terry deflects it with his suit, to which the Batman half of Joker says, "It's his uniform, idiot," to which then real Batman jumps in and says there must be some anti-magnetic charge in his suit. And so now we have Tim Drake, Terry McGinnis Batman, Batman/Joker, and real Batman all in a fight together. And they start going in against Joker Batman. Tim jumps over Joker and sees the Batman half from behind. And he's like, look, do as I say, get out of the way if you don't want to. And then all of a sudden, the nuclear self-destruct protocol activates in the Bat combo. And so Tim's like, Bruce, is that really? And then all of a sudden he gets swiped away. The Joker half notices Tim, grabs hold of him. The Batman half locks eyes with the real Batman. And so he goes diving into the bar because if Batman dies here, this future can't happen. Or at least that's the idea. So Batman dives in the bar as he's being shot at. Joker then continues the assault on Batman. A brick comes out of nowhere and hits Batman in the face. And it explodes, thus showing it's from plastique. So Joker, Batman's out for a little bit of time. Terry and Plastique run in. And Plastique's immediately like, it's the end of the world, man. Let's get our asses to T-Tech. And Batman's like, what? And Terry's just like, oh god, okay, look, everything that's happening right now is because you and Mr. Terrific created a crazy-ass dystopian world, and I would like to tell you everything that's going on, but, like, it's future stuff. And Tim's like, you're from the future? And Plastique's like, no, but the other guy is. And he's like, yeah, I can believe that. So he's saying, look, that the Joker bot is after me. Everyone else go over to Terrific Tech. There's no time left. Plastique, you got to help them. Tell them what they're looking for. So they all make their way out as Joker bot gets up. Goes after Terry. We cut over to Metropolis, where Dr. Polaris is going up against, I can't even remember this guy's name, Storm, whatever. And he's like, oh, I'd like to give you credit. You were quite the celebrity. You were a soldier that went in and fought the Parademon War, and you single-handedly did all this stuff. You rallied the troops to victory, but then you went and joined the Justice League, and now you suck. So at that point, he's like, look, you're good PR. That's all you were to the Justice League. They use people like us, and they see us inferior. And as he's going and saying, like, oh, go to hell. He's like, oh, yeah, no, you claim to protect and save lives, but they don't give us the basic tools to save ourselves. And then Superman/Shazam comes in. punches Dr. Polaris into a truck. It's just like, you think you're the only one who suffered? We all lost people in the war, man. Like, you keep on ripping me for keeping Superman's shield alive. Have you seen him? And he starts ripping off Polaris' armor. Polaris is like, stop! I can't maintain the field. And as he's about to deliver a final blow, Firestorm comes in and stops Superman. And it's like, hey, I need him. And Superman's like, okay, look, I don't know if you know how the rules work here, rookie, but you don't get to interfere like that. And she's like, I don't like your tone, and just drops him into the sewers, just opens a hole in the floor and drops him in. And she says something as Jason's yelling at her head, of just like, have you lost your mind? You're helping the villain. And she's like, hey, enough. You and Superman need to learn that just because a woman has a different opinion doesn't mean she's lost her mind. I'm done doing things your way. And so she repairs Dr. Polaris' armor and says, hey, I need your help, and in return you're going to help me. And he's like, why the hell would I do that? And she says, it's your experiment that put me in this body. You're going to separate me and Jason Rush. And in return, we're going to go up and you're going to fix me via the watchtower. And in return, you're going to get the teleporter tech that they have. You're going to share that technology with the world. And he's like, done, in, totally cool. So they fly up into space, and Shazam and the Storm guy are like, did we just get our asses handed to us by a woman? So we then cut over to Sahara Desert, where 50 Sue has brought the DNA vault from Cadmus Islands along with Lana and Grifter. And I could go in depth to what it is, but it is literally just Grifter chewing out Lana for trying to act like a mom, Lana chewing out Grifter for not backing her up as like the dad of this little parental unit, and also telling 50 Sue like, hey, you stop back talking, stop being such a little brat. Like, we need to figure out what we're going to do with this vault. And 50 Sue suggests, like, oh, maybe we sell it to the highest bidder. And she's like, no, we're going to do something good and responsible with it. And Grifter's like, okay, maybe we should just vaporize it, just disappear it. That would be enough. And 50 Sue's like, oh, but I was born in there. And basically he's just like, okay, look, it's filled with the DNA of all the superhumans on Earth. In the wrong hands, it could be a problem. And Lana's like, okay, well, what if 50 Sue teleports it away to only a location that she knows? That would keep it out of the wrong hands. It's like, she just wanted to sell to the highest bidder. Clearly, she's not trustworthy to be doing that. But regardless, even if she did, the bad guys would come up and just threaten you. And Grifter holds like fake finger guns up to Lana's head, just being like, tell us where you hid it or else we'll kill. And then it gets teleported to Antarctica. And 50 Sue's like, that's what I do in that situation. Anyway, help me get into this thing, Lana. So then we go to Romania, the Carpathian Mountains, where Amethyst is dragging Frankenstein up on a sled. And he's recounting poetry, and she's like, oh, that's beautiful. Did you write that? And he's like, no, I have never been brave enough to write poetry myself. And she's like, oh, well, maybe you should give it a shot. By the way, you keep calling me like ma'am and m'lady. Call me Amy. That's my name. I think we've earned it by now. So they get to Castle Frankenstein, and as they go inside, they're immediately attacked by a bunch of steampunk, horrific-looking monsters. Frankenstein's unable to do anything, and as Amethyst tries to fight back, in walks Dr. Frankenstein, who's like, oh, you cut it out. It's not every day my son comes back home. And Frankenstein sits up and goes, Father. So that's the issue. The component parts themselves are not bad. Like, I can see each of them working in their own way. It's just like collectively, it's not an interesting story. You know? I'm getting to the point where we're 10 issues from the end. I'm expecting there to be a lot more overlap. I'm expecting there to be like, okay, things are going to start tying together now. This is the point where we're building to a crescendo. And it still feels like everything is so removed from each other that, like, it feels like it's just going to miss the mark entirely. And from what I understand of how people like the series, that's the case. But like, I'm trying to give it the benefit of the doubt, and it still feels like there is no guiding principle here. We've been going for 38 issues, and it feels like, oh yeah, the Frankenstein Amethyst thing, that's never going to interact with anything else. Clearly it will. Clearly we'll get there, but like, it doesn't feel like we will. So I'm going to say this is a 6. It's just lacking in a lot of ways for me. I'm not feeling a lot of the arcs, and I'm just hoping that there's going to be some level of intrigue that's going to get me back to it. And I don't know what it could possibly do to get me there. Earth 2 World's End number 16, written by Wilson Bennett Johnson, art by literally everybody DC has ever met. So, this issue picks up with the parliaments of the various elements, all basically saying, well, we're screwed, we're done, we have officially run out of options, and there is no way we're going to win. And then all of a sudden, the dude from the Parliament of the Reds is like, hold on, something's happening. So we then go down into the fire pits where Superman just sacrificed himself to take out the entirety of this little factory thing. And Desaad seems super happy about that last issue, but now he's nowhere to be seen. And we see Power Girl goes up and says, like, hey, I'm sorry for what happened to you, big red monster, but, this sucks. And the monster's just like, I am no monster. I am Yolanda Montez. I was once human, and now I'm outie. So in her big red monster form, she blasts through the roof of the fire pit, and Val-Zod's like, oh, damn. She's taking the whole place down. We got to get out of here now. The whole facility's collapsing. And Lois is like, I can't leave him behind. And she picks up Power Girl picks up Superman, just being like, you won't have to, let's go. So they follow Yolanda out through the top of the fire pit, and that's that. We then go back to the fight between the Furies and the remaining Avatar people. It's not going well. The War Fury uses the Green Lantern's blast against her, reflects it off her axe, and sends it into Solomon Grundy. So it's like, oh, there you go. That's the last one. Now it's down to you, Green Lantern, axe or sword. And Huntress comes up being like, oh, let me do it. I want to... Wait a minute. Why is the ground moving? And then all of a sudden, out comes Yolanda, the Red Avatar, to join the fight. And over in Geneva, I guess nearby, the rest of the crew comes out, Val-Zod, and everyone's just like, oh, wow, we made it. We took out the fire pits. Awesome. And Batman's just like, no, it's not awesome. I lost Helena. This isn't over yet. I got to get her back. And Val-Zod's like, hold on. I really want to point out here what we did. That was a parademon factory down there. And because it was poisoned, not only did it stop all future parademons, but all the parademons that are currently out and about causing chaos, they also all just died. Like, this is the best victory we have ever had in the history of our war. And Batman's like, cool, I'm going to take some venom so I can go get Helena, because I can't track her anymore. And she immediately, Red Tornado's like, now hold on, don't do the venom thing yet. We need you to be like sane. And he's like, why not? And she's like, I'm a machine. Use my body to boost the signal. You can get her GPS. And he's like, oh, yeah, I guess I'm not thinking straight. I need to get out of this suit. I don't like being in this. And she's like, I get it. It's hard, but like, just try to calm down. So we then follow Power Girl and Val-Zod. They take Superman's body over to a nice little grassy hill with a little tree and a couple of rocks. And she's like, look, I only have a few minutes. Will you help me bury him? And they dig a little grave for Superman and bury him there. Lois comes over with the tattered S on that was kept alongside and being like, look, this was always yours. He was your father. He was your family. Take this as your symbol. And so she covers up her boob window with the Superman S, officially becoming still Power Girl, but regardless. She's like, hey, awesome. Can I ask you something, though, Lois? And she's like, yeah, of course. And he's like, help me go save Helena. It's kind of important to me. And she's like, yeah, of course, let's go. So we then cut over to the Apocalypse crew, Mr. Terrific, Sandman, Mr. Miracle, and Fury. They teleport back into the Amazonia base, and Jimmy Olsen's like, he's still flying around. He's still got a little bit of power. So he's like, hey, guys, welcome back. I could tell the Apocalypse thing didn't work, but upside to it, because of Commander Khan's sacrifice, we now know about a ship Terry Sloan had built that can hold hundreds of thousands of people. The new plan is we're going to pull an Ocean's 11. We're going to go in. We're going to steal the ship without Darkseid noticing us. So let's go. We then go to the World Army headquarters in Geneva, or an outpost, I should say, and nobody's there. It's a ghost town. So Jay Garrick hops on the comms, talks to the group, just being like, hey, guys, we all had to bail. We don't have enough pilots to even take off these planes. You guys can use whatever you want if you have use for it. But did you guys destroy the fire pits? Was that you? And it's just like, yeah, that was us. Glad that's working out for everybody. He's like, yeah, totally. Anyway, I'm sending you a file on the Furies because they're causing problems. Maybe you should go over and help with that. And it's like, oh yeah, Helena's with them. So the super crew's in to help with that. And we see them over Russia. The super crew arrives to help Alan Scott and the rest of the crew take out the Furies. Pestilence goes after Red Tornado, which does nothing because she's made of metal. And Red Tornado, Lois tries to talk to her did you hurt someone? Is that why you killed someone close to you, didn't you? You want to talk about it? And then Solomon Grundy comes in and just starts punching him out. He makes a bone tomb so that the Pestilence will have no organic tissue to latch onto. And then Fury's War. He's fighting against Val-Zod and just oh, I'm not going to be swayed by your tricks. I love my master. You won't be able to get me to bail on him. And Val-Zod's okay, grabs hold of War's hands and be you're a Tamaranian, which means that you absorb radiation. That's where your powers come from. I'm Kryptonian, so do I, and I'm stronger than you. So he's able to push the radiation into her body to the point where it overloads her, burns out her synapses, and is I'm not killing you, I'm not even hurting you, but I'm taking away your powers for good. And then we go over to Death, who is staring down Batman in an F-16, and it's I yield, I'm done for the sake of my baby. And so she just lays back, and that's it. But Helena comes in, attacks the F-16, Batman has to bail out. Power Girl grabs hold of Helena midair, slams her into the ground, hard enough that the Fury just comes out of her. She's fine now. However, she still has this weird veiny thing going on with her skin. Something's messed up with her. And in her final moments as human, she's oh, he won't let you have me back. Darkseid won't let you keep me. And she passes in Power Girl's arms, saying you were never his, and fight him, please, Helena, please. So teary goodbye there. But the final reveal is Death, who is just letting this happen. She says, for the life of my child, and then all of a sudden her stomach bursts open and a giant clawed hand comes out. And that seems foreboding. So yeah, I like this one. It's bringing plot strings back together. It's showing, okay, here's what the final actual real goal is. That was a problem I was having with last issue, is it just felt like everything was sucking all the time and there was never ever really a success. This is, okay, we have a success. It still leads to something bad, but there is a countable real win here of the parademons being gone. That's great. I like that. And then we now have this goal that we're moving towards of this ship. We are trying to get away under Darkseid's nose. I like that as a concept. So overall, like it, love it, down with it. So, I mean, this is as good of an issue as any. I think that this one is probably going to be a 7.5 for me. My only real criticism is I would have liked more time being spent to the morning of Superman. It kind of just felt like it was okay, now Power Girl's the new Superwoman, whatever, moving on. Just a little bit more there would have been great. But I get it. They're on a timetable. They got to rush this forward a little bit. So I'll give it a 7, and we'll see if this can keep it going for the next 10 weeks. Harley Quinn number 14, written by Amanda Connor and Jimmy Palmiotti, art by Chad Hardin. So last issue... Look, last issue was just a whole bunch of stuff. It really doesn't relate that much to this issue. So this issue picks up with Harley being oversleeping. Her alarm's going off, and she's apparently got some dude just duct taped to her wall. And so she takes her alarm clock as it's going off, and she drowns it in her sink as she starts brushing her teeth. And then as she is doing so, all of a sudden the legs of the Edgar guy, that was his name, come in and start just rampaging through her room and starts ripping the guy that was duct taped off the wall. Edgar comes in saying oh, I'm so sorry, my legs have gotten away from me, they're malfunctioning, let me see if I can find something. And so he goes to his closet, gets another pair of legs, which is the lower half of a gorilla, and then says, I'd follow me. And he sends that pair of legs over to attack the tentacle legs. And Harley's hey, can you take this somewhere else? And so Edgar puts his head on the body of the ape and says I apologize about the door. I'll buy you a new one. So he walks out. Harley then jumps in the shower. She turns out there's no hot water. She goes down to the basement of the building where the water heater has essentially exploded, and there's no way to fix it. We see that Mason is there. Mason was the romantic interest from like 2 issues ago. And he's like, hey, I got a guy. He can give you a sweet deal on a new one. It'll cost you like half for what you would expect. And Harley notices there's a cut on his arm, and he's like, oh yeah, don't worry about it. I must have cut it when I was working on my water heater. And he just rips off his shirt and ties a bandage around it. Harley's still wearing a towel. It's just like biting the towel to like hold back. And he's like, oh yeah, well, I can give you the details tonight. How about over dinner? Say 7. And she's like, yes, great. So at that point, Tony tells her that she needs to go up and turn off the water while they're like trying to get all this fixed up. And so she goes back upstairs to apparently her pet room. The room with all the dogs in it is where the water is. So she runs in. The dogs are just crazy to see her. And she turns off the water. Turns out they're almost out of food, so she makes a note of that. And as she goes back in, she hears her phone ringing. One of the tenants apparently busted his TV by headbutting it, as all of the electronics in his room are busted. So he's like, oh, can you fix the stuff in my apartment? And she's like, talk to Tony. He's like, Tony said talk to you. She's like, oh, I'm busy. So she gets up, and it turns out it's her work calling. She has 3 therapy appointments scheduled in like an hour, and she's expected to be down there. And she's like, oh yeah, I'll be there in no time. So she puts on her makeup, gets on her suit, and then heads out the door. And she's like, God, I got to be there in like 10 minutes. There's no way I'm going to make it. So she grabs a skateboard and starts skating down the boardwalk. And as she's doing so, we see 2 bikers come up saying like, oh, you ready for this? Yeah, let's do it. And they zoom past her and then punch an old lady and steal her bag. And as they do so, Harley sees this, just being like, oh, not on my watch. So she steals a guy's wrench, throws it at one of the bikers, misses and hits some other guy entirely. That biker's getaway as Harley stops, helps the grandmother to her feet. The grandmother's like, oh, my rent was in there and my food for all my cats. What am I supposed to do? And Harley's like, oh God, here. And she just hands over a huge wad of cash and says like, take it. Hopefully this will cover your rent. Get something good for the cat as well. And then some police officers show up and say like, oh, don't worry, officers, I'll go get the bikers and bring them to justice. So she doesn't. She then goes into work, and we see Cy Borgman is there saying, hey, don't know why you're so late, but either way, some thefts have been happening around here, real important stuff like medicine and machinery that keeps people alive. I need you to keep an eye out. And she's like, yeah, sure, whatever. So she goes in to see her first appointment of the day. It's some really kinky old dude who's like, oh yeah, my name's Seymour Bupkin. You can call me Seymour. What can I call you, madam? Or sorry, mistress. And she's like, okay, we're not doing this. So we see that the supervisor, I guess, is knocking on Harley's door. She comes in. Seymour's tied up and gagged on the desk. And it's just like, oh yeah, it's psychotherapy to help him examine his own internal weaknesses or whatever. So the therapist says, hey, look, I need you to work overtime tonight. We had a few people call out. You got to do a couple extra appointments. And she's like, oh, I can't. I have a date tonight. And the supervisor's like, I wasn't asking. So we then see one of the appointments doesn't show. Harley talks to one of the nurses there, and he's like, oh, yeah, I saw her 20 minutes ago. Harley goes into her room. She's been attacked. Her room's a mess. She's unconscious on the floor. She's not breathing. We get a full, like, actual description of how to perform CPR, like, for real. And then we see Harley's backed off as some medical professionals coming to help. So Harley leaves. It's like 3 a.m. She's like, oh, I'm so tired. I had to bail on dinner with Mason, but maybe I can see if he's still awake. So she rappels down into his apartment, comes into his bedroom, and just lays down in bed with him because he's already asleep. And then as she's like, oh, well, don't you want to rev up your Harley? To which then all of a sudden he turns into the Joker and says, yes, straight to hell. And then we see Harley wakes up. Turns out she actually fell asleep at work. And she's like, oh, God, what did I miss? And it's like, oh, well, that woman, someone stole her equipment while she was using it. But, like, it was ridiculous that all this is happening. And he's like, yeah, it's about 6:45, by the way. And she has to call Mason because dinner was at 7, cancels. He's like, oh, yeah, don't even worry about it. I wasn't even dressed yet. Turns out he was wearing this dress up to the nines. He was super well dressed up. And he talks to his mom, who was helping him, just being like, well, Mom, do you want to go to dinner with me? And she's just like, oh, okay, let me get a better dress on. So We see Harley then gets a call from her teammates on her roller derby squad. They're like, hey, we had a game tonight. Where are you? We're going on 15 minutes. She's like, no one ever told me we had a game tonight. So then Cyborgman comes up saying like, hey, by the way, don't forget your gig at the skate club tonight. And she's like, look, I can't make it. I'm stuck at work. And the team is talking, saying like, oh, I'm not sure if she should be on the team anymore. She's a maniac. And the nurse who's there is like, look, I can cover for you. You did me a solid earlier. I'll be sure to cover whatever you need. And she's like, oh, thank you so much. I owe you. And so she runs out the door as the nurse is like, I love you, Sue. Love you too. Harley hops in a cab. Turns out the cab driver is not the cab driver. It's some dude who stole this cab. He tries to mug Harley, and Harley's like, hey, do you have any idea the night I've had? Screw you, man. Take me where I need to go. And he's like, you're about to get your head blown off, man. And she's like, yeah. And she headbutts the guy, seemingly shoots him in the ass, and then throws him out of his cab as she drives away. And we see that she went to the roller derby because they were expecting her. She did end up getting there too late, but regardless, they're just happy that she made the effort to go. So they all go down to a nearby diner on a corner. And as they do so, Mason sees her and is like, Harley, I thought you said you had to work. And she's like, oh, I did. But you see, and he's like, oh, don't worry about it. It's just, whatever. And the mother scolds Harley as Mason walks off, just being like, oh, well, have a good night. And we see Harley just kind of get sad on the corner of the street as the roller derby team's like, whoa, what was that? And she's like, look, I gotta harmonificate my life, even if I gotta kill somebody to do it. So, setting up next issue, how is Harley gonna get her life under control? I'll give it this much. While it does seem like it's just a bunch of random stuff happening, it's a bunch of random stuff happening with a purpose, Like, it's supposed to show how absolutely out of control Harley's life is, and she's trying and failing to get control of it. So, that's progress. That's a plot. Like, more than most of the rest of this book has had. It's actually something that's like, oh, we can get character development out of this. Beyond that, it's more just a standard Harley issue. I think overall I'm going to give this one 7. It's good, actually, and I'm looking forward to seeing how Harley's going to keep all of this stuff and start, getting control of her life, but ultimately I still feel like it's a bunch of jokes all thrown together, so we'll see how it goes. But, yeah, 7 for this. Secret Origins number 9, 3 stories following Swamp Thing, Power Girl, and John Stewart Green Lantern. So first story we've got is Swamp Thing, written by Charles Soule and Alessandro Vitti on art. And it follows from the perspective of Gaurav of the Serene, who has been working with Swamp Thing for a while. And just like, yes, I am the last of Serene. I've been neglecting my duties as I am the last of the Serene, but I do think it is my duty to write down the history of the current avatar of the Green Swamp Thing. And I've done a fantastic job of following him, as he's possibly one of the greatest warriors of all of the avatars I've ever seen. And the reason that he's able to give such good things is that because of happenstance happening in Charles Soule's run, he's managed to also talk to a couple of the past avatars of the Green that were able to shed some insight on Alcon. For instance, Brother Jonas, the Wolf, and Lady Weeds. And Brother Jonah is like, oh yes, I caught up with him once, and back then he was, and then Wolf jumps in being like, a child, he was ignorant, he barely knew anything at all. Anyway, I'm lucky that I mentored him, otherwise he'd be, and then Lady Woods jump in and just says, dead. So, you get a little bit of their personalities through there. And then we get a description of the different kingdoms, saying like, look, all the kingdoms are always at war. You got red versus green, you got gray versus rot, you got all this other stuff going on, but the big one is the battle between life versus death, and that is green versus the rot. And we see that it's Swamp Thing versus Anton Arcane, and the Green saw that the Rot was going to be making some big moves in the future. So they got set up with their own champion of champions, the strongest guy that they could find, who was Dr. Alec Holland. He was a botanist. He was already with the Green, and they got it set up, and they're like, yep, he has a biorestorative formula, and he will be helpful in the fight against the Rot. But the Rot found out about this, and so they ended up killing Dr. Holland before he could become their Swamp Thing, their Avatar of the Green. And so he ended up dying in a bayou, and that was the end of it. However, he was so important that the Green said, no, we're going to take his essence, and we're just going to throw it into the bayou and turn it into an Avatar. And it'll think it's Alec Holland, but it won't be. And that was the entire, why am I blanking on his name now? Moore run. And we see, yeah, that happened, but then it learned the truth about itself, and it just went away. And we see that it's on another planet at this point. However, somehow, brightest day, somehow, Alec Holland was revived. He came back and he was actually real. And so he was a human again. The Rot started making its move. It started doing things. And Alec refused to take his place. He didn't want to become the Swamp Thing. He wanted to maintain his normal life as a human. But because of everything that happened in the arc, where the Rot was making moves, he realized he had to take this. He had to give up his humanity. But it was almost too late. But then he's like, oh, here's the last batch of the biorestorative formula. Go ahead and use it. And so he became the Avatar of the Green. And not only that, he became a much closer Avatar where he gave up his own true humanity to become closer to the Green than any other Avatar before. He was a body of plants instead of just a human controlling them. So we get to see the rest of the arc where he goes. He fights against Scarecrow. He talks to Superman. Fights against Constantine for a little bit. Jason Woodrue shows up, tries to take his place as the Avatar. And then there's the machine thing going on, which the story is like, well, I won't tell how it ends. And he's like, yes, but as I said, it seems he was born to be a warrior. And then Gorov gets interrupted as Alec comes out of the ceiling and he's like, hey Gorov, you've been writing for a while, make sure you stay hydrated and well fed. And he gives him like this big plump peach and he's like, here you go, don't work too hard. And then he just disappears and Gorov eats the peach and he goes back up to the beginning of the story where he says greatest warrior and he crosses it out and says most human. So that's a nice little bit. Honestly, I love the Swamp Thing arc beginning to end, whether it's the Snyder part or the Charles Soule part. Like, it's great. So I really enjoyed this one. I think it does a good job of recapping it. I'm going to give it an 8. Very good. Next up, we have the Power Girl part, which is written by Paul Levitt's art by Alison Borges. And it's just showing Power Girl growing up on Earth 2. Her ship landed and Superman just came across it and she was like a toddler girl. And he's like, what the hell is this? So brought it inside to his parents, and they're just like, well, it's clear that, you know, she came from the same place you did, and whoever she is, she's family now. And Superman's like, what am I supposed to do? I'm not ready to handle a kid. And the Kents are like, don't worry about it. We'll raise her for a while. You're good. It's fine. We'll do our part. And Superman's like, oh, thanks, man. Super cool. So then she launches through the roof, and it's clearly going to be a hassle. So we see little stockpiles of her, like, carrying a cow through a wall and just, like, hauling it around in the sky, and the cow is freaking out, but she comes back with like a whole bunch of lumber to help John Kent repair the farm. And eventually she turns 18, and Superman's like, hey, time for you to get off the farm. We're going to take you somewhere. And she's like, oh, I can't wait to live in Metropolis with you guys, you and Lois. And Superman's like, it's not exactly what we're doing, but like, I don't think you guys are safe here. There was a whole crossover over in Batman Superman that's now canon, but like, just, I'm working on something, okay? And so Karen says goodbye to the Kents and flies away, and they end up flying to a little secluded island in the middle of the ocean. She's like, this is a metropolis. And he's like, nope, here's the deal. I'm going to take you here, and you, me, and Lois are all going to live here, and I'm going to make you the secret weapon for this upcoming war. I'm going to make sure that you're ready to fight. This is your destiny, and that's why we have to be separate from people, because we're special. So she gets trained as Supergirl, does everything possible. However, because of the events of the book, Lois ends up dying pretty prematurely. Really messes with Clark, and that was kind of just the first strike in the battle with the Apocalypse stuff. So across the way, Huntress, at that point Robin, loses her mom, Catwoman, which also messes with her. And we see that she eventually comes out just to be able to do like rescue missions. And it's always really easy for her because the Apocalyptians don't know about her. She's able to sneak in pretty easily. But then the day happens where Superman is killed, Batman is also killed, seemingly to defeat Apocalypse, but it transports Kara and Robin, aka Helena, over to Earth Zero. And as they arrive there, she's looking around. She's like, oh, hey, a world where I don't have to live in Superman's shadow. I can be whatever I want to be. I want to be rich and famous. And so she just uses her powers to do those things. And she ends up, having a romance with Mr. Terrific. She becomes a superhero, fights alongside Helena, until eventually she figures out a way to portal back home with some scientists, and she ends up going back. And in return, as she's leaving, she leaves behind a note, which is what all the narration we've been reading up to this point is, and a machine that is apparently something that Clark used to try to give Lois the powers of Superman. And that is what she gave to Power Girl in her current Earth, on Earth 0, to give her powers. So Tanya Spears, which is over in Teen Titans, she became Power Girl, and Kara's like, oh, try to do the same, take place of Earth. Like, I had a lot of fun here. So, yeah, that's the story of that. I'm a little iffy on the art style at some points, but generally looks good. For the most part, I think the story is kind of, it's been covered like 3 or 4 times across Earth 2, World's Finest. In Helena's Origins, we also got the same sort of thing. It's been a lot. So I think I'm probably going to end up giving this one like a 6.5, maybe even a 6. 6.5 though. So last one we get is Jon Stewart, and that is written by Van Jensen, art by Pat Broderick. And we just basically get his history. And we see Detroit City Hall a few years ago. His mom is protesting for something about the government, and John's ready to start throwing fists, but the mom's like, no, we got to be peaceful. That's how we win this. So John eventually joins the Marine Corps in order to pay for school, and as he goes out, he gets shouted at, he does whatever, he's got good talent, he's a good marksman. Something happens, and I believe this happened in 0 year, where John stands up to his superior officer and threatens him because the superior officer was willing to kill U.S. citizens, and so he gets discharged honorably from the Marine Corps, goes off, becomes an architect. His mom's like, oh, hey, you could work here in Detroit. That would be fine. But ultimately he goes off and wants to work somewhere a little bit warmer, especially after spending so much time out in the desert. So he goes and works for Carol Ferris, building a new airplane hangar for her. And she's like, oh, yeah, you do great work, John. You're welcome here as long as you want. Meanwhile, this entire time, narration's been coming from the Guardians, basically saying, like, something is coming. We need some extra help on Earth. This guy looks like a good candidate. He may not be the best with authority, though, so we have to test him. And we see the Guardians have sent down a manhunter that's saying, where's Green Lantern? And Carol's like, what the hell? I don't know who you are or what Green Lantern is. It's fine, I swear, I don't know. And as it's about to attack Carol, John comes in with a pipe, starts trying to hit it over the head. It bats him away, and as it's about to kill him, Green Lantern ring comes in. You have the ability to overcome great fear, blah, blah, blah. So now he's got the Lantern ring. He's throwing punches on the Manhunter, but it's still not enough. He says, God, what I would do for a machine gun. And then he constructs one because he thought about it. And so he uses the machine gun on the Manhunter and says, I got a better idea. And he makes a tank. And the tank blows the Manhunter away. He makes a helicopter for Carol and the rest of the crew to get away from the fight from. And the Manhunter's now repositioned, saying, like, Green Lantern located, must eliminate Green Lantern. And so it starts attacking Jon Stewart, and John's like, this ring isn't doing enough. I need something bigger. So he goes over to the airplane hangar he was building, and he gets Manhunter inside. Manhunter's like, there's no escape. And he's like, yeah, for you. And he takes down all of the metal girders and stuff he was using to build the airplane hangar, wraps the Manhunter up in it over and over so he's unable to escape, and then says, like, I noticed there was a design flaw for you. Your head's not as defensive around the neck. And so he uses the ring to cut into the Manhunter's neck and cut off its head. And then the ring's like, all right, cool, you did it. We're taking you to Oa now. And it's like, wait, what? So he ends up on Oa. Kilowog's like, hey, I'm your training officer. You're a rookie, but the Guardians want to see you. And so he's brought before the Guardians, and they're like, hey, Jon Stewart, we sent the ring over to you. We saw that you are a conflicted man. You strive for peace, and yet you're willing to fight. That's something cool. We want you to be able to do that. And Jon Stewart's like, will do. And then they're like, he must never find out that we sent the Manhunter there, or else he would totally know that we're douchebags. And that's it. That's basically what it is. So that one was a little bit more iffy. The art style is very stylized. It's not a house thing at all. It's very much this artist. It's not bad, but it's also not my taste either. So I think I'm probably going to have to give this one I'm going to say 6. And that's mainly just because I don't like this origin for John Stewart. It just seems too basic. I wanted it to be something a little bit bigger. I don't know if we've actually gotten the official origin for him in New 52, but this just seems a little bit too... It's just the Guardian said, hey, here you go, we're picking another one from Earth. Like, there was already Hal. This shouldn't have been something that was easy, you know? It should have been something that was a bit weirder that it had to happen. So, yeah, it's 6 for this, but whatever. Those are the 3 stories of Secret Origins. Deathstroke number 4, written and art by Tony S. Daniel. So last issue, Deathstroke fought against Bronze Tiger after learning that his dad was still alive and was a supervillain named Odysseus, and then he needs to go rescue his son Jericho from being caught by his dad. I think that covers everything. Oh, and then Harley heard that Deathstroke was coming to Gotham because that's where Jericho is, and she's pissed about stuff that happened over in Suicide Squad. So we pick up with the interrogation of Bronze Tiger, and Red Fury is there. He did something in his, like, temporal lobe to keep him calm and whatever, and just answer things with the truth. And we see that we also have a truth serum cocktail that's going in. So Red Fury activates these radio signals that's going to be able to get the memories out of him. But he's fighting. He's fighting hard, and Bronze Tiger starts like bleeding from the nose, and Red Fury's like, I don't know. This isn't normal, man. I don't know what's going on with him. And then Bronze Tiger just yells out like, kill her, do it now. Slade, you gotta free me so I can kill her for you. And Deathstroke's like, I'm sorry, who's her? What's going on? And Red Fury's like, don't worry about it. It's just gibberish. I'm trying to shut him down, though, before he's lost forever. And Slade takes one of the truth serums, jabs it into Red Fury, just being like, okay, I'm going to need some truth from you now. And Red Fury pulls out a knife and starts swinging at Deathstroke, being like, oh, you forced my hand. I'm sorry I have to hurt you. And he's like, oh, you're such a smart man. Why do you think I'm not going to pulverize you right now? And Deathstroke basically pulls away like some of Fury's costume, like the mask and specifically the chest area of the costume, and just be like, who is this her that he's talking about? And then he sees Red Fury's wearing a bra, and just like, oh, well, that explains that. And so Fury takes off the mask and just like, yeah, I'm a woman. Bronze Tiger wants to kill me. That's clearly he works for the League of Assassins. That's a whole thing. And Slade's just like, okay, so you're going to tell me the truth? And she's like, yeah, unfortunately, I do have truth serum in me. And he's like, cool, awesome. Who the hell do you work for? And she's like, my name's Kendall James. I work for the Dead Bastards. It's like, who's the Dead Bastards? And it's like, we help CIA and Interpol. We take care of Black Ops stuff. And it's like, well, which one wants my father dead? CIA and Interpol? It's like, both. Which one wants me dead? Both. And it's like, okay, well, what's your plan after I find my son? And then Bronze Tiger comes to me, or not Bronze Tiger, a voice off to the side says, allow me to answer here. She's to do whatever the Dead Bastards need her to do. And then we see that the person that was speaking is Victor Ruiz, aka the Spanish Inquisitor. I don't know who the hell this is, but regardless, Deathstroke does. And just like, oh, how is this possible? How are you here? And it's just like, everyone seemed to have thought me dead. You've seen the photos of my corpse, but that's what the Dead Bastards do. And then he's just like, oh, okay, you're working for the CIA. Got it. And just like, yes, and you're a lone wolf. How's that been going out for you? And then there's a hand on his shoulder, and it turns out it's Angelica from like 3 issues ago. And he's like, wait a minute, I definitely saw you dead. And she's like, I have a healing factor. It's just not as strong as yours. And then standing behind her is I Ching, the guy who brought Deathstroke back to being young and healed him up. And just like, wait a minute, I Ching, what the heck? I got a ton of questions. And he's like, I don't have any answers. What's happened to you is totally crazy. And I just want to pause telling you the story right now and let you know, as I'm reading this, I don't understand what the goddamn hell is going on. Like, on one page, we get 3 characters thrown in to this seemingly clandestine, like, interrogation of Bronze Tiger, all of which are characters that I didn't think have anything to do with each other. And I'm like, okay, so when is it going to reveal this is a dream sequence? It doesn't. This is happening. It's so weird. So, regardless, Deathstroke's like, all right, so what's the end game here? And he says, you capture my brother and kill my father. I'm pretty sure he meant son. I think he's talking about Jericho. But I don't know about Deathstroke's brother. That doesn't... Again, I'm very confused by this whole part. But regardless, he's like, look, your dad's like really strong. He's got an entire village that he had like rise up and slaughter their oppressors. Like, it's a whole thing. The dead bastards are looking to destroy the power he holds. And Deathstroke's like, there has to be another way. Like, you want me to kill my father. And it's like, yeah, but like your memory should be back now. You have to know why that's a good thing. Like, that's a whole thing. And Deathstroke's like, how do I know you're not just manipulating me? Clearly you have the ability to. Like, how am I supposed to trust any of you? And it's like, look, his telepathic bond with your son is what makes him unstoppable, but right now he's vulnerable, and we need to be able to get that beforehand. And Deathstroke's like, all right, fine, I'm in. So Bronze Tiger is going to be implanted with a false memory of killing Deathstroke, and he's going to believe it to be so true that Odysseus is going to think it as well, because he can see into people's minds. So we cut over to whatever village Odysseus is at. He's talking with Lady Shiva, and he's like, hey, Shiva, any luck on finding Jericho? And she's like, no, there's nowhere we can see him. And he's like, yeah, no, whatever. We'll find him later on. By the way, what about Ra's al Ghul? Is he still alive? What's going on with the League of Assassins? Just like, nah, Ra's is probably like dead. We haven't heard from him in months. And it's like, cool. Then you lead the League of Assassins, and you will swear your loyalty to me. Got it? And she's like, yes, of course. And her eyes are glowing green, implying that she is under his thrall. So Bronze Tiger shows up and says, hello, Odysseus, all that is whole again. He's like, yeah, whatever. Did you kill my son? And she's like, yes, I have killed Deathstroke. Also, I found out that he's wanting to go to Gotham because that's where Jericho is. And they're like, hold up. What, he just told you this with his dying breath? How did you get that info? And Bronze Tiger's like, oh, I heard it. He was talking to somebody, and I got intel, and then I killed him. And he's like, all right, let me check. And he looks into Bronze Tiger's mind, and it's just like, yeah, no, you killed Deathstroke, and my grandson's in Gotham. Cool. So Bronze Tiger and Shiva, you guys go to Gotham. I'm going to hold a little martial arts tournament thing over here in the background with my followers. They're just going to kill each other, and the last 5 left alive will be your backup team. Chaos and blood. So then we cut over to Gotham, and we see Jericho is just walking down the street, and he goes up to some guys in a gang and just like, hi, I'm looking to meet Rose. She told me to meet her here. And everyone's just like, oh, there's no Rose here, boy, but you came to the wrong side of town. And they start threatening him with knives, and he's like, oh, I don't want any trouble. And then off the rooftop is Rose, Ravager, wearing a sweet new outfit. She jumps down, starts killing all these gang members, and she's just like, hang tight, little bro, I'm just gonna kill all these guys, don't want them messing with the neighborhood kids. And Jericho's just like, oh, Rose, let's get out of here, I don't want to get into more trouble. Just like, Jericho, you're safe, I'm so sorry for what happened to you. And they have like a little heart-to-heart for a moment, and it's just like, look, I should have looked after you better, but I have help here and now, and we're gonna be able to do this. And he's like, who's helping? And it's just like, don't worry about it, but I promise no one's ever gonna hurt you again. So we cut over to an airport, and it's just Ruiz telling Deathstroke, like, hey, you're going to get to Gotham. You're not going to have any problems landing. Take care of Odysseus, and you'll get a massive payday. Also, here's a crate load of ammo. Take whatever you need. And it's saying, like, by the way, we got news that Jericho met up with Rose. Do you know anything about her? And he's like, nah, I barely raised her. She was barely a part of my life at all, but whatever, I'll find her. Let's go to Gotham. So we arrive in Gotham. Deathstroke meets up with Harley almost immediately, and Harley's like, hey, you stabbed the Suicide Squad in the back. And he's just like, no, look, the deal with the Russians went south. I allowed myself to get shot to allow the Suicide Squad to get out of there. It was all according to plan. I didn't betray you guys. And he's just like, yeah, all right, whatever. So he's like, look, someone who is trained like me has been around here, my daughter. Have you seen any, like, execution-style stuff? And it's like, oh, yeah, it's happening all over Gotham. Crazy amounts of executions. So I came across a smelly one the other day at a nearby school. And it's like, take me to the bodies. And she's like, okay, what do I get out of it? And just like, okay, well, help me find my daughter, and I'll let you out of your whatever thing you got with Amanda Waller. I'll help you get free, no strings attached. And she's like, could you kill Amanda Waller? And he's like, don't push it. And he's like, all right, fine, whatever. So she takes him to a middle school that's completely abandoned and just awful. And she's like, let me try to remember where these bodies are. And Deathstroke's like, Harley, seriously, this is not like the time for your little shtick. And she's like, oh, well, they're definitely not behind this door. And so Deathstroke just breaks down the door. And inside are a bunch of bodies that have had their heads removed. And Deathstroke's sword is planted inside of them. And he's like, wait a minute. These are the swords that I left with Amanda Waller when we went to go do our Suicide Squad bit. You're setting me up. And she's like, yes, nobody betrays me. Nobody. And then she starts screaming out like, why did you kill all these middle school teachers, Deathstroke? Please don't kill me. And then we see the shadow of Batman come in, and he's like, your reign of terror ends now. And Deathstroke's like, son of a... And Harley literally breaks the fourth wall, saying, oh my god, what a cliffhanger. The fight of the century. The world's greatest detective versus the world's most deadly assassin. Who wins? That's the issue. Look, those pages saying like, hey, here's literally everybody. And also... possibly something about Deathstroke's brother. But I think they meant son. Pacing-wise, whatever the hell's going on, that was a misstep. That could have been written so much better. I don't know what the hell was going on in that sequence. Cut the Red Fury scene and just have her unmask and be like, okay, yes, I am a woman. He was talking about me. But also... here's all these other people, and then give them a bit more time to talk about, hey, we're here, instead of it all being condensed into literally one page. Okay, and then the Harley stuff at the end is also kind of just like, all right, weird, but I'll take it. Overall, 6. Not really fond of this one. If it gets us to Gotham, it's fine, but ultimately I'm just not happy with the way the story really unfolded there. If the ends justify the means, sure, I guess, but ultimately I didn't like the means. And that's it. That is all the comics that came out from DC Comics this January 21st, 2015, and also 3 comics from January 28th. Look, I'm not proud of it. All right, I did what had to be done. I looked at the situation and I said, no. And then I did something else. If that's not heroic, then what is? Probably anything else, because I just do a comics podcast and nothing can be defined as heroic in that situation. But regardless, yeah. So looking at next week, there were 19. There are now 16 comics, but it is still going to be one hell of a week. So let me just run you through exactly what we got showing up here. We have, in no particular order, Arkham Manor, Batman, Catwoman, Gotham Academy, Gotham by Midnight, Red Lanterns, Sinestro, Aquaman, Flash, Infinity Man, G.I. Zombie, Justice League Dark, our 3 weeklies of Batman Eternal, World's End, and Future's End, and then the piece de resistance, Multiversity Guidebook, which I checked, according to DC Universe Infinite, is 71 pages, 30 of which are just walking through the Earths. If you have any preference, and I mean this, I will listen to whatever the first comment says. If you have any preference as to whether or not I go in depth to each of those Earths, like telling you what they are, or just skip the pages altogether, please tell me. I have been so torn up about that since I started this show, about what I was going to do when I got to this issue. Because it's not a story, it's just, here's a map and like the listing. It's like me reading your city's Yelp to you. Like, oh yeah, would you like this bar? It's on Earth 28. So yeah, please let me know. I am very interested. Beyond that, really don't have anything else I want to talk about at the end of this episode. It is the last time that anything will be super complicated. We are very rapidly approaching Convergence and therefore DC YOU period, and therefore the end of the New 52. For anybody who's unclear, the show's still going to continue on. I'm still doing post-Convergence up until Rebirth. Like, duh. I would just... What, are you expecting me not to cover Darkseid War? Are you expecting me not to cover the back half of Gotham Academy? The other JLA series, written by, I want to say Hitch? Maybe Finch? I always get those two mixed up. Of course I'm doing all that. Anyway, I am rambling, so let me just say all my usual outro stuff to you. If you have any comments that you would like to share on any of the comics I talked about this week, last week, any week at all, go ahead and hit me up on one of the major social media platforms that we have accounts on. We have a subreddit, we have a Discord, we have a Patreon. I have a Blue Sky that I am not good about making very well known, but I'm working on that. So feel free to let those known. Or if you're watching the YouTube video version, there's a comment section right there, and those ones I always see. Most of them are nice. A lot of you have been saying that I need to show the comics, like a little camera over my shoulder that shows you what the hell I'm talking about. And to those people, I get it. I wrestled with it. I really wanted to try it, but then I was reminded by the actual owners of this channel that copyright infringement is a crime, and that's what I'd be doing. So, sorry, I guess. So anyway, yeah, that's me. Hope to see you next week. Be sure to tune in to my non-copyright infringing channel. And always try to remember that if it ain't broke, don't fix it.